What if the only thing standing between you and like a $1 million business isn't a lack of funding?
Right. Or a lack of time.
Exactly. What if it's not a lack of time? And it's certainly not a lack of, some world-changing genius.
Yeah. What if it's much simpler than that?
What if the only thing actually holding you back right now is simply the paralyzing fear of just getting started?
Oof. I mean, it's a deeply uncomfortable question to sit with, honestly.
Oh, for sure.
Mainly because it strips away all our favorite excuses, right? Like, we are culturally conditioned to believe we need permission to start.
We really are. We think we need a degree or a perfect business plan or, I don't know, ideal market conditions.
Yeah, we wait for this mythical state of being ready.
Which never comes.
Never. But while we're sitting around waiting for the stars to align, ordinary people with average ideas are out there building profitable businesses every single day.
And they're doing it simply because they decided to leap while everyone else was still, drafting their business plans in Microsoft Word.
Exactly. They completely bypass the trap of endless preparation. And that trap, that's exactly what we are dissecting today.
Right. So in this deep dive into the start here and just viewing start chapters of Noah Kagan's book, $1 Million Weekend, you are going to learn how to bypass that over-preparation trap.
And really rediscover your natural courage to create.
Yes, because this matters for anyone interested in business or entrepreneurship. The ultimate shortcut to success isn't learning more theory.
No, it's not.
It's mastering the habit of taking immediate, imperfect action to validate your ideas in 48 hours.
To really understand the mechanics of this, I mean, we need to look at the foundational premise of Kagan's methodology.
Let's do it.
Because, this is coming from a guy who has built 8 different million-dollar businesses.
Yeah, companies like AppSumo, SendFox, KingSumo.
Right. So he has the reps. He knows what actual market validation looks like in the real world.
I'm not just a theorist.
Exactly. And back in 2013, he decided to run an experiment to see if he could teach his exact process to others.
This is where the source material takes a turn that I think will really resonate with a lot of people listening.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
He puts together a beta group. It's 5 ordinary people like a programmer, a horse trainer, folks working standard 9-to-5 jobs.
Normal people.
Right. And he gives them the blueprint. They have his direct access, the exact frameworks he used to build his own empires.
And what happens?
Well, 2 weeks go by.
2 whole weeks.
And the result is absolutely shocking. 0 progress.
They literally did nothing.
Nothing tangible that actually moved a business forward anyway.
Wow.
And what's really fascinating here is what Kagan realized during the autopsy of this failure, basically.
When he got them all into a room.
Yeah, for what he essentially called entrepreneurial group therapy. He found it wasn't a lack of intelligence holding them back.
Right, because they were smart people.
Very smart. It wasn't that they couldn't grasp the concepts or that they lacked technical skills.
So what was it? They were entirely derailed by 2 primal psychological blocks: the fear of starting and the fear of asking.
Okay, let's hover on that first one for a second, because I feel like the fear of starting sounds almost too simple.
It does sound simple, yeah.
Like, why is the act of simply taking the first step so universally terrifying to us?
Well, I mean, it stems from how we are programmed to view risk, right? Particularly in an academic or corporate environment.
Now, that makes sense.
From a very young age, we are taught that failure is this permanent mark on your record. You get an F, it stays on your report card.
It's a permanent stain.
Right. So when we look at entrepreneurship, we project that same monumental, terrifying risk onto it.
Even when it's not warranted.
Exactly. And to mitigate that perceived risk, we default to what feels safe, which is preparation.
Ah, yes. We read another business book.
We sign up for another online course on Udemy.
We spend 3 weeks debating the exact shade of blue for our logo.
It feels like productivity,
Right.
But it's actually a defense mechanism we're hiding behind the research.
We absolutely are. We mistakenly believe that more planning mathematically equals less risk.
But psychologically, the complete opposite happens. Inaction creates a vacuum.
And in that vacuum, fear and doubt just multiply.
Yep. Kagan argues that the absolute best way to learn what you actually need to know isn't by planning for every single contingency. It's by running small experiments.
Okay, I want to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
Because this is where a lot of sharp analytical people listening might push back.
Yeah.
Isn't heavy preparation just, responsible business practice?
I hear that a lot.
I mean, if I launch a half-baked product into the market, don't I ruin my brand reputation permanently? Like, how do we distinguish between being a smart, calculated planner and just being a procrastinator hiding behind a spreadsheet?
That is the crucial distinction, honestly, and it really comes down to understanding the mechanism of market feedback.
Okay, explain that.
Responsible business practice isn't about avoiding the market until your product is flawless. It's
Okay.
about engaging the market as quickly as possible to see if your product is even wanted in the first place.
Right, because if nobody wants it, who cares if it's flawless?
Exactly. Business is this continuous iterative cycle of starting, asking people to pay, and adjusting based on the data you get back.
So if you aren't doing that,
If you are preparing in a vacuum without live customer feedback, you aren't actually mitigating risk at all. You are taking on a massive risk. That is the danger of preparing without real-world friction.
wow. To understand how to avoid that, I love the analogy we can draw here. Think about a submarine.
Okay, a submarine.
When a submarine is navigating in pitch black water, it doesn't map out the entire ocean floor on a giant whiteboard before it moves.
Right, it can.
No, it sends out a single ping, just a small pulse of sonar. It waits to see what that ping bounces off of, and then it adjusts its course based on that immediate real-world data.
I love that. That is the perfect mental model for what Kagan calls small experiments.
You aren't committing the entire ship, you're just sending out a ping.
And here's the thing, experiments are supposed to fail sometimes.
Right.
In science, a failed experiment isn't a disaster, it's just data. It tells you what doesn't work.
So when your business experiment fails, it's not a reflection of your intelligence or your worth as a human being,
Not at all. You just tweak the variables and send out another ping.
which fundamentally changes the pressure we put on ourselves, I think.
Mm.
And this leads directly into one of the most powerful concepts in the text, which is creator's courage.
Yes, creator's courage. This is the underlying trait shared by almost all highly successful entrepreneurs.
It's a total myth that these people possess unmatched, visionary expertise from day one.
A huge myth. What they actually possess is the willingness, the audacity, really, to run an absurd number of seemingly random, often foolish-looking experiments.
And they know most of them will fail.
They expect them to fail.
The text highlights this beautifully by looking at the origin stories of massive empires. We tend to view these companies through the lens of their current success, right?
Of course.
Assuming they were born out of a grand 10-year master plan to dominate global markets.
Though when you look at the reality, it's almost comical how humble and experimental their beginnings actually were.
It's so true. Look at Apple. It didn't start with a grand vision for the iPhone.
No, it started as two guys in a garage putting together a carryable computer kit for hobbyists.
Literally just hobbyists. And Facebook. It wasn't a mission to connect the globe. It was a weekend project. Basically a hot or not clone for college students.
Yeah, just messing around in a dorm room. And Airbnb.
Oh, this one is wild.
They literally just threw an air mattress on their living room floor and charged people to sleep on it because they were broke and needed to make rent during a design conference.
An air mattress, that's it.
Yeah.
And Khan Academy, which completely revolutionized online education.
That started as just a guy making 10-minute rudimentary videos to tutor his cousins.
His cousins, the through line here is just undeniable. None of these founders waited for the perfect business plan.
None of them.
They didn't seek massive funding before taking the first step. They just identified a tiny, immediate problem, and they leaped into the mud to solve it.
They possessed creators' courage.
Exactly.
And what's fascinating is the psychological hurdle required to do that. The difference between the dreamers and the doers isn't access to venture capital or, an MBA from Stanford. It is the willingness to look foolish in the short term. Steve Jobs famously said that you have to be willing to crash and burn, and you have to be willing to pick up the phone and ask for help.
But the stark reality is, most people will do anything to avoid picking up that phone.
They really will. They protect their ego at the expense of their potential.
So the practical takeaway for you listening right now,
Yep.
stop waiting for a fully formed, world-changing vision to strike you.
Yes.
Your goal isn't to build an empire today. Your goal is simply to start. Leap into the mud, run the small experiment, send out the sonar ping, and see what bounces back.
And to ground this in a very specific tactical example, the source material details Kagan's early days at mint.com.
Oh, this story is so good.
It perfectly illustrates what running a small experiment actually looks like in practice.
It totally demystifies the idea of startup growth. So Noah is at Mint.com before they've even launched.
Yeah.
He wants to be their director of marketing.
Right.
And the founder basically looks at him and says, Noah, you have zero marketing experience.
Which is a pretty massive roadblock for most people.
For most people, yeah. The instinct would be to just retreat. You think, okay, I need to go read 10 books on marketing, maybe take a certification course, and come back in 6 months.
But Noah didn't do that.
Not at all.
Yeah.
He embraced what the text calls the N-O-W not how energy. He didn't wait to learn the theory, he just hustled and ran experiments.
And we really need to look at the mechanics of how he did that, because he didn't just blindly throw things at the wall.
Right, he was strategic. He needed to prove there was a market for a personal finance tool before the tool was even fully built.
Because you can't sell a product that doesn't exist yet.
Exactly. He couldn't sell a product, so he sold a promise. He went to where his target audience was, personal finance blogs, tech forums, and started gathering email addresses.
He ran targeted ads against the concept of the tool, not the tool itself.
Yes. By just testing messaging and collecting leads, he managed to drive 100,000 registered users to Mint before the site even officially went live.
I mean, that is an astonishing metric for a pre-launch startup.
Unbelievable.
And that initial momentum is what led to Mint hitting 1 million users in 6 months.
And then eventually being acquired by Intuit for $170 million less than 2 years later.
But this is where the story has a massive twist, right?
Oh, yeah. It introduces a whole new layer to the psychology of the entrepreneur. You hear that number, $170 million, and you assume Noah walked away incredibly wealthy.
You would definitely assume that, yes.
But he didn't. He had a 1% stake in the company.
Okay.
But because of how vesting schedules work, if the company sold for that massive amount, his payout would be capped at around $2 million pre-tax.
Which is still a lot of money.
It is. But the catch was, to get that money, he would have to stay locked in middle management at the acquiring corporation for 4 long years.
Wow. So he really had to do the math on his own life.
Exactly. He looked at the situation and asked himself a profound question. Could I create more money, more joy, and more insight by betting on myself instead of clocking 4 years in a cubicle?
And he believed he could.
He did. So he walked away from the vesting schedule.
That takes guts.
Instead of settling into a comfortable guaranteed outcome, he used his mornings, his lunch breaks, his nights, and his weekends to build a side project called Gambit.
And Gambit was a payment system for social games,
Right.
Which was a booming market at the time.
Right. And within 2 years of betting on his own ability to run experiments, Gambit generated over $15 million in revenue.
Incredible. If we pull back and analyze the psychological gold in this story, we see that Kagan's ultimate superpower wasn't that he was a once-in-a-generation marketing savant.
No, not at all.
His superpower was his comfort with the process of leaping. He didn't overthink the how of marketing. He focused on the now of execution. He trusted his ability to iterate.
And there is a crucial pro tip embedded in this section of the text that serves as a massive warning for anyone building a business.
Oh, the warning about the end goals.
Yes. Kagan explicitly warns against basing your happiness or your self-worth on the ultimate financial outcome.
Right, on being the smartest or the most successful or the richest person in the room.
Because the goalposts will always move.
Always. There is always someone richer. There is always a company growing faster than yours.
Exactly. If you constantly compare your end results to the highlight reels of other entrepreneurs, it will completely hollow out your motivation. You will feel like you are perpetually losing.
So how do you sustain the drive if you aren't focused on the gold medal?
That's the million-dollar question.
You have to shift your identity. You define yourself by your daily process, not the outcome.
Process over outcome.
You wake up and ask yourself, am I being a starter today? Am I running an experiment? Am I learning something new from the market?
I love that.
If you focus entirely on the identity of the process, being a person who takes action, the financial outcomes eventually follow as a byproduct. But more importantly, you maintain your resilience and your sanity along the way.
So the practical takeaway here is vital. Define yourself by your daily actions. Fall in love with the process of being a starter, not just the dream of being a millionaire.
But, as we mentioned earlier, starting is only half the battle.
Oh, right.
You can build the most elegant, problem-solving product in the world, but eventually you hit the real wall.
The second primal block.
Yeah.
The fear of asking.
Exactly. Because having a product doesn't make you a business.
No, it doesn't.
Asking for money and actually receiving it makes you a business.
Hmm.
If you cannot face another human being and ask them to hand over their hard-earned cash for the value you've created, you don't have a business.
You have a very expensive hobby.
You really do.
This is where the rubber meets the road. Ask avoidance is the silent killer of startups.
It's rampant.
People will spend thousands of hours coding an app or designing a storefront, but the moment they have to send an email saying, buy my product, they freeze.
They absolutely freeze. They offer it for free. They discount it heavily. They do anything to avoid the potential rejection of a direct ask.
And Kagan introduces a very specific, highly engineered cure for this exact paralysis.
He does. And it is arguably the most uncomfortable exercise in the entire book.
It really is. It's called the dollar challenge. And according to the text, it is the exact challenge he has used to change the trajectory of thousands of his students' lives.
The premise is deceptively simple.
Painfully simple. Here's the mission. You have to ask someone you know for a $1 investment in you and your future business.
Just one single dollar.
The book even provides the exact word-for-word script you're supposed to use. Let me read it to you.
Go for it.
Imagine texting this to your friend or, like, an uncle right now. Hey, name, I'm reading this book, $1 Million Weekend, and they told me I need to get $1 from someone. You're the first person I thought of, and it would mean a lot to have your support. Can you send me $1 right now?
Oh, wow. Even just hearing you read that aloud, you can analyze the physical reaction it provokes.
Oh, it is a full-body cringe. My stomach actually tightened just reading it.
It really is visceral. It triggers a profound evolutionary fear of judgment and tribal rejection.
Yes. Our brains immediately start spiraling, like, what are they going to think of me? Are they going to think I've lost my job and I'm broke?
Or are they going to laugh? Is this going to ruin our relationship?
Exactly. But that intense, irrational physiological response is exactly why the challenge is so mandatory.
There is a brilliant quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson cited in the text here.
What is it?
Do the thing you fear, and the death of fear is certain.
Okay, but let's really interrogate this. Why $1?
Yeah, it seems arbitrary.
Right. If you're going to put yourself through the emotional ringer, face potential rejection, and risk looking foolish to someone you respect, why not ask for $100 or $1,000? If you're going to sweat, make the sweat worth it.
I mean, that is the logical assumption, but it fundamentally misunderstands the psychology of the block.
How so?
The amount is intentionally insignificant for a very specific reason. By asking for just $1, you completely remove the financial burden from the equation.
Ah, okay.
Think about it. If you ask a friend for $1,000 and they say no, your brain can rationalize it. You can tell yourself, well, they probably just don't have the liquidity right now. It's not about me.
Right. Nobody is going bankrupt over a single dollar.
Exactly. If they say no to $1, they aren't saying no to the money, so what remains?
The ask.
The only variable left is the pure, unfiltered discomfort of the ask itself. It isolates the emotion. You are forcing yourself to face the raw sensation of vulnerability.
That makes so much sense.
But here's the magic of the exercise. Once you push through that cringe, hit send, and actually receive that first dollar via Venmo or PayPal, a psychological shatter point occurs in the brain.
The illusion breaks. You realize the monster under the bed isn't actually there.
You realize that the act of transacting business isn't this mystical, complex, life-or-death scenario. It is simply two humans exchanging value. Business is just starting, asking, and iterating.
So the practical takeaway for you listening right now, send the text today.
Do it today.
Put a name in the bracket, copy the script, and hit send. Embrace the cringe. Let your stomach tie itself into knots.
It's worth it.
Getting that first dollar is a deeply symbolic game changer. It is the official dividing line between being an entrepreneur on the sidelines and an actual player on the field.
And once you are on the field, the next immediate challenge is maintaining that momentum.
Because it's so easy to stall out.
Human nature will constantly try to pull you back into the comfort of over-preparation, which brings us to Kagan's antidote for overthinking.
Yes, the NW not how habit. This is a massive paradigm shift.
It really is.
Because even after you've started, whenever you hit a new obstacle, your first instinct is usually to retreat back into research mode.
It's our default defense mechanism against uncertainty.
Totally. You realize you need to run Facebook ads, so instead of just running one, you go buy a book on digital marketing.
You sign up for a Udemy course.
You watch 50 YouTube videos on ad copy.
Huh?
It feels incredibly productive.
You feel like you're working on your business.
But it is actually a highly sophisticated form of procrastination.
Because it delays the actual engagement with the market. Real power and real velocity comes when you systematically implement now into everything you do.
You have to train yourself to completely bypass what the text refers to as your inner negotiator.
The inner negotiator.
That's the voice in your head that pleads for just a little more time. Like, let me just finish this one last module, or I'll draft the email today, but I'll sleep on it and send it tomorrow when I'm fresh.
Exactly. It's the voice of friction. And to illustrate how to defeat this, there is a fantastic, highly revealing story in the text about an ad agency pitching AppSumo.
I love this story because it exposes how ridiculous standard corporate pacing is.
It really does.
So this external ad agency comes in to pitch Noah's team on a new Facebook marketing campaign. They do the whole presentation, the slide deck, and the pitch goes really well. Noah says, "Great, let's do it."
Now, usually this triggers the standard corporate dance.
Right. The agency says, "Excellent. We'll send an email recap in 24 hours outlining next steps, and we'll request all the things we need to get started: passwords, creative assets, account access."
It's the standard operating procedure for almost every business on Earth, the built-in delay.
Right. But Noah's now not how havoc kicks in. He stops the agency reps right there in the room and says, no, let's do all of that right now.
And they literally just opened their laptops and did it.
They generated the passwords, handed over the assets, and launched the framework. It took 5 minutes.
5 minutes of immediate action. And think about what that saved. It saved 24 hours of idle waiting.
It saved the back and forth emails.
The inevitable follow-up calls, the miscommunications, and most importantly, the loss of momentum.
It's such a brilliant shift in operating rhythm. You stop negotiating with the future and just execute the immediate next step in the present moment.
To help you build this exact muscle, the book provides another practical challenge that you can do literally right now while you are listening.
The N enable you, not how challenge.
Yeah.
Here is the prompt. Think of a person in your life whose business acumen or general judgment you deeply respect.
It could be a mentor, a former boss, or just a really smart friend.
Have a name. Okay, without hesitating, text them right now and ask them what kind of business they think you'd be good at.
The key is the lack of hesitation. Don't open your notes app and draft the perfect, eloquently worded paragraph for 3 hours.
Just create the spark immediately. Text them, hey, I'm trying to come up with some business ideas right now. You know my strengths well. What kind of business do you think I'd be good at?
And hit send.
What you are doing here isn't even necessarily about getting a brilliant business idea back. You are actively rewiring your brain circuitry.
You are training yourself to act in the moment rather than deferring action to an imaginary perfect future.
Which serves as the perfect logical bridge to our final and perhaps most critical, actionable idea.
Because once you have trained yourself to take immediate action, where exactly are you aiming that energy?
This brings us to the concept of goal setting. But Kagan approaches this in a way that aggressively counters traditional startup culture.
Right, because traditional goal setting, especially in the tech and startup world, is absolutely toxic for beginners.
It really is. It's all about disruption and changing the world and becoming a unicorn.
The pressure is immense and, frankly, paralyzing.
And that extreme level of abstraction creates massive distraction.
Exactly. When your goal is to build a billion-dollar empire, the gap between sitting at your kitchen table with zero revenue and ringing the bell at the New York Stock Exchange is so unfathomably huge that your brain essentially glitches.
You literally do not know what to do at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday to inch toward $1 billion.
Right. Instead, Kagan introduces a concept that is refreshingly pragmatic. The freedom number.
The freedom number is the ultimate clarifying metric. It is simply the monthly revenue you need to generate to cover your absolute minimum living expenses so you can quit your day job.
It's rent, groceries, basic utilities, nothing flashy.
Or, if calculating your total living expenses still feels too intimidating right now, Kagan suggests picking a small, purely symbolic number.
Like $500 a month?
Just enough to prove to yourself that you are capable of generating your own income outside of a traditional paycheck.
The psychological insight from the text here is incredibly profound. Kagan writes, many struggle to make their first dollar because they're so focused on how to make their first million.
Wow, that really exposes the trap, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The grand ambition is actually the very thing preventing the execution.
Because the brain cannot process the steps required for $1 million from a standing start. But if your goal is $500 a month,
you can immediately brainstorm 3 very practical things you can do this afternoon to move toward that.
You could text 5 friends to offer a consulting service. You could post an item on eBay. You could pre-sell a weekend workshop.
The text provides a sobering quote here. If you commit to nothing, you'll be distracted by everything.
The freedom number forces absolute commitment to a tangible, immediate target.
So your practical takeaway for this final concept. Write down your personal freedom number today. What is the exact monthly number that changes your reality?
Once you have that number, let it act as a filter.
It focuses your mind entirely on what you can execute this week to inch toward that specific attainable goal, ignoring all the noise about changing the world.
If we pull all of these disparate threads together, the beta group's paralysis, the origin stories of Apple and Airbnb, the Mint.com hustle, the sheer discomfort of the dollar challenge, and the pragmatism of the freedom number, the absolute core of this entire methodology boils down to one undeniable foundational truth.
And what is that truth?
Successful people just start.
They just start.
It sounds almost insultingly simple, but it is the ultimate divider. They don't have fewer fears than you do.
Right. When they send the text for the dollar challenge, their stomachs tie in knots, too.
They don't have access to some secret cosmic vault of flawless, risk-free ideas. They just have the creator's courage to leap into the mud, to send out the sonar ping, to face the cringe of asking, and to run the experiment today rather than planning for tomorrow.
And I think that is the most empowering realization you can possibly take away from this material. Who you are, what you have, and what you know right now, sitting exactly where you are listening to this, is more than enough.
It absolutely is.
You do not need another certification. You do not need a massive seed funding round from a venture capitalist. You just need the courage to stop negotiating with your fear, run a tiny experiment, and ask for what you want today.
It is entirely about motion, moving out of the safety of your own head and into the friction of the real market.
So you've got your marching orders. You understand the trap of over-preparation. You've embraced the NW not how have it, and you are ready to send that wildly uncomfortable text to claim your first dollar.
What happens when the inevitable occurs and the answer is a flat, resounding no?
It is a very real possibility, and it's where most people quit forever. Next time, we'll dive into the psychology of why collecting those rejections is actually your ultimate secret weapon, and how a bizarre, counterintuitive experiment called the coffee challenge will make you absolutely fearless in the face of the word no.
So imagine for a second, right, that you've just landed, like your absolute ultimate dream job.
Of a golden ticket.
Right. I mean, you aren't just a regular employee. You're on the ground floor of a company that is quite literally rewiring how human beings communicate with each other.
Yeah, the stakes are just unimaginably high.
Exactly. So you're 24 years old, you're living in this house full of brilliant engineers, and you're sitting on this pile of stock options that, if you literally just don't mess it up, will eventually be worth $1 billion.
A billion, with a B.
$1 billion with a B. And then, on a completely random Tuesday, a senior executive pulls you into a coffee shop across the street. He sits you down, looks you right in the eye, and he fires you.
Ouch. Just, yeah, stomach dropping.
Right. And not because the company is struggling or, budget cuts. He fires you because you are, and this is his exact word, a liability.
It's the kind of visceral scenario that just induces a cold sweat, honestly. Because you're handed this golden ticket, and then you're just unceremoniously stripped of it.
Yeah.
In public.
Totally. So the question we're really posing to you today is, what do you do in the aftermath of that? Do you let that spectacular, highly visible, billion-dollar failure completely destroy you?
Most people would. I mean, I think most people would just retreat into a cave forever.
Right. But could that precise, devastating rejection actually be the exact catalyst you need to unlock a completely different kind of superpower in business?
That's the core tension here, because almost all of us, we operate under this incredibly pervasive assumption.
What assumption?
That to build a successful business, you need flawless execution. We're taught we need endless preparation, a pristine resume, the perfect MBA.
50-page business plan, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And above all else, you must avoid failure at all costs. But the reality that we're dissecting today is that the only thing actually standing between you and the life you want is the willingness to just start before you are remotely ready.
Yeah, the terrifying, messy willingness to just go for it. So for everyone listening right now, today we are taking a massive deep dive into the core philosophy of Noah Kagan's approach to business.
It's such a fascinating approach, too.
It really is. We've pulled together a stack of sources for this. We're looking deeply at chapter 2 of his book, $1,000,000 Weekend, specifically focusing on this really provocative concept of, well, just fooing start.
Which is such a great chapter title, by the way.
Oh, it's perfect. But we're also, pulling in insights from his interviews, some articles, and our own research notes on the psychology of entrepreneurship. Our mission today is to completely deconstruct this idea that you need permission or perfection to create wealth.
Right, because we are going to map out how to transition from being an overplanner, someone perpetually paralyzed by needing just a little more data, into an unstoppable experimenter.
Yeah, that transition is key.
It is. And by understanding this now, not how mindset and identifying a specific metric called your personal freedom number, you'll discover how ordinary people start profitable businesses every single day.
Not by being the smartest person in the room.
Exactly. They do it by developing a very specific kind of courage.
And the origin story here is just, it's critical to understanding that courage because Noah Kagan's path is not that polished, friction-free Ivy League trajectory you'd expect from a Silicon Valley guy.
No, not at all. It's actually quite the opposite.
Right. Even though he grew up right in the geographic center of that world, he's raised in San Jose, goes to this highly competitive Bay Area high school. Every day he's walking the halls with, like, the children of America's tech elite.
Which, ironically, can be one of the most alienating environments to grow up in, especially if you don't naturally fit that mold.
Yeah, he felt like a total outsider.
Yeah.
It's actually kind of heartbreaking, but deeply human. I mean, he's a native-born American citizen raised in California. But when he finally gets to UC Berkeley, and he only gets in through, like, a spring semester extension program because someone else dropped out, he gets placed in an ESL class.
English is a second language.
Yes. Because his English SAT scores were apparently that bad. He's just constantly scraping by trying to gain access to these elite institutions.
Yeah, and the pattern that emerges here is really fascinating. It's this accumulation of almost successes that mutate into highly specific, deeply personal rejections.
Oh, the Microsoft story.
Yes. For instance, he hustles his way into a junior year internship at Microsoft. In that traditional tech pipeline, that is the golden ticket.
It's basically an extended job interview.
Exactly. Unless you do something catastrophically wrong, it leads to a lucrative full-time offer. But he performs so poorly in the concluding interviews that Microsoft flat out rejects him. They literally tell him not to come back.
And then the Google story is even crazier to me.
Oh, it's wild.
He somehow gets a pre-IPO job offer from Google. This is really Google, right? The kind of equity that mints millionaires overnight. But during the final stages, the hiring committee actually rescinds the offer.
They take it back.
They take it back. And do you know why? Because during one of their technical interviews, they discover that he literally cannot do long division on a whiteboard.
I mean, just think about the psychological toll it takes. He's constantly gaining access to these elite, highly guarded rooms through this chaotic brute force hustle.
Yeah, he gets his foot in the door.
Right. But once he's inside, the institutions themselves tell him he fundamentally does not measure up. He's constantly being told, you tricked your way in, but you don't actually belong here.
Which perfectly sets the stage for the Facebook disaster. So he finally lands at Facebook as employee number 30. He's 24, living in that famous Palo Alto house with all these super nerds.
Working on a highly secretive feature called status updates.
Yeah, he's living the absolute Silicon Valley dream. He's granted a 0.1% stock share. And then about 9 months in, Matt Kohler, who goes on to be this legendary venture capitalist, takes Noah across the street for coffee.
And in 20 minutes, it's over.
20 minutes, he fires him. And he doesn't just use corporate speak like it's not a culture fit. He calls him a liability.
That word liability is so heavy, especially in a corporate context.
Why is the word specifically so damaging, do you think?
Because it implies you aren't just underperforming. It implies your very presence is actively dangerous to the organization's survival.
Wow. Yeah, it's a crushing assessment of your worth. But if we look at the source material, Kohler wasn't entirely wrong based on traditional standard.
No, he wasn't. Noah was acting like a rogue element.
Totally. He was allegedly leaking company expansion plans to tech journalists while partying at Coachella. He was using the Facebook office after hours for his own startup networking events.
He was writing blog posts on his personal website detailing internal company dynamics.
Right. He was acting exactly like a scrappy startup founder, but inside a company that was desperately trying to mature into this legally compliant behemoth.
If we look at this through the lens of organizational psychology, it's a classic clash. It's the traits required to survive the primordial soup of a brand new startup versus the traits required to scale a multi-billion-dollar corporation.
They're completely opposite skill sets.
Exactly. In the beginning, a startup needs rogue, chaotic energy. They need people who will do absolutely anything to hack growth. But the moment the company stabilizes,
Those exact talents become a massive threat.
right, the hacker mentality becomes a security risk. The relentless self-promoter becomes a PR nightmare. What made you valuable at 10 employees makes you a liability at 100.
So the execution happens. Noah hands over his laptop and he's out. And as the years go by, Facebook explodes, and he realizes he missed out on roughly $1 billion.
Just an unfathomable amount of money.
But I have to stop right here and challenge this, because losing $1 billion and being labeled a liability by top Silicon Valley minds, that would send almost anyone into a permanent spiral.
Oh, absolutely.
Most people would just retreat to a cabin, refuse to ever look at a computer again, and let the bitterness consume them. How does someone extract any value whatsoever from a failure that is so public and so financially catastrophic?
It's the crucial question of this entire deep dive. And it speaks directly to the core mechanics of human resilience. Because what actually happens is that his absolute ultimate worst nightmare comes true in broad daylight.
For most of us, failure is like a hypothetical monster in the closet, right?
Exactly. We tiptoe around it. But for him, the monster came out and completely devoured him. He lost the money, the status, the peer group, and for 8 months he wallows on a friend's couch.
Which is a totally normal reaction.
It is. He's entirely consumed by shame. He feels total validation of those worst inner voices. The ones from Berkeley, Microsoft, Google, telling him he was always a fraud.
But then something shifts.
Yes, a massive psychological shift. It's the shift from desperately trying to hide your shame to completely unapologetically leaning into it.
Right, because once the worst possible thing has already happened, what is actually left to be afraid of? The secret is out.
Exactly. He realizes the energy he's spending trying to conceal the failure is what's actually exhausting him. So he embraces the identity. He literally starts introducing himself at conferences as the guy who got fired by Facebook.
Wow. And how do people react to that?
They aren't disgusted. They're fascinated. They respect the radical honesty because it demonstrates an incredible lack of ego and an absolute immunity to the fear of judgment.
By owning it, he disarms it.
Precisely. The heavy, suffocating pressure to conform to a pristine corporate trajectory vanished overnight. It wasn't an option anymore, so he was free to operate outside the system.
He was free to just be his authentic, messy, chaotic self.
And that is profound insight you can apply immediately wherever you are in your career. You do not need to make a billion-dollar mistake to realize that your fear of judgment is entirely overblown.
We spend so much energy curating a flawless professional facade, don't we?
An exhausting amount. We're terrified that if a project fails or a side business gets 0 customers, our peers will brand us as losers.
But by actively owning your flaws, talking openly about missteps, you remove the emotional leverage that fear has over you.
When you stop hiding, you free up massive amounts of cognitive bandwidth that you can then pour into actual creation.
But that begs the question, right? What does that creation actually look like? Once you're liberated from the fear of judgment, what do you actually do on a Tuesday morning?
Well, for Noah, it led to a period of absolute manic chaos.
Yeah, he just starts throwing himself into every random business opportunity he can think of. Let me just list some of these projects because it's wild.
Please do. They are all over the map.
He moves to Jeju Island in South Korea to teach online marketing. He organizes a massive dodgeball tournament pitting startup founders against venture capitalists.
A very normal pivot, right?
Yeah, totally normal. He builds a college dating website, a personal CRM platform. He launches an events business charging 50 grand for tech conferences.
And spoiler alert for the listener, almost all of these projects completely failed, broke even, or just quietly faded away.
Right. And to a traditional business analyst, this looks completely unfocused. It looks like a phenomenal waste of time.
It looks like a guy with a short attention span.
Exactly. It looks like frantic sonar pinging, just sending signals out, waiting for anything to bounce back. So I have to ask, is this really the secret to building $1 million business?
I know it sounds counterintuitive.
Because we're always told to find a niche, focus relentlessly, build a 10-year vision. Is this rapid-fire pivoting actually a strategy, or is he just avoiding a real job?
It is incredibly easy to dismiss this phase as a lack of discipline. But if you look at the mechanics, it isn't chaos at all. It is a highly compressed, high-volume data gathering process.
Okay, break that down for me. What kind of data is he gathering?
This is the physical manifestation of what the author calls creator's courage. To understand why it works, think about how human beings actually learn optimally.
Like how a toddler learns to navigate the physical world.
Exactly. They don't read a manual. They just start grabbing things and dropping them. Or think about how you learn to ride a bicycle.
Right, you didn't read an engineering textbook on gyroscopic balance.
No. You went outside, got on the bike, immediately fell into the mud, scraped your knee, and your brain implicitly gathered the sensory data of what not to do next time.
You shift your weight, try again, and your nervous system calibrates. You learn through the friction of reality.
Precisely. Not through theory. And successful creation in business is almost always a byproduct of running numerous small, low-stakes experiments that generate that exact kind of friction.
Because the variables are so complex.
Incredibly complex. You have to discover what daily tasks you actually enjoy, what the market will actually pay for, and what your own execution strengths are. Those variables cannot be solved on a whiteboard.
They only reveal themselves through continuous real-world trial and error.
Right. So all those failed businesses, the dating site, the dodgeball tournament, they weren't failures in the traditional sense. They were essential data points in a larger experiment.
Which makes sense, because if you trace back almost any massive company, you rarely find a flawless master plan.
Never. Apple started as a clunky computer kit built in a garage. Airbnb started with guys throwing air mattresses on their floor because they couldn't make rent.
They were just trying things.
But as adults, we develop this fundamental problem. We start viewing our ideas as these precious, fragile, high-stakes gambles.
Yeah, we fall in love with the idea. We build a whole fantasy around it before we even know if a single customer wants it.
And because we tie our identity and future wealth to this one idea, we become terrified to actually roll the dice. We sit on the idea for years.
So the insight for the listener here is to fundamentally change your psychological relationship with your own ideas.
Stop treating them like one-in-a-million lottery tickets. Treat them as small, fun, scientific experiments.
And if they fail?
Statistically, most of them will. They're supposed to fail. The failure is the mechanism of discovery. You extract a lesson and immediately move to the next experiment with zero loss of enthusiasm.
But that manic energy, that constant pinging of the radar, eventually it has to lock onto a target, right? You can't just run dodgeball tournaments forever.
Right, you do have to eventually find traction.
And that target finally materialized for Noah with Mint.com. This phase perfectly illustrates the difference between caring about the end result versus falling in love with the process.
The Mint story is just incredible.
It is. So Noah is in this endless experimentation phase, and a friend shows him an early prototype for a personal finance tool called My Mint. It's being built by a solo founder, Aaron Patzer.
And Noah sees it and is just blown away.
He instantly sees how it could revolutionize money management. So what does he do? He goes straight to Aaron and aggressively pitches himself to be the director of marketing.
Which is incredibly audacious. He had virtually zero formal marketing experience. He was a product manager at Facebook.
Exactly. But he just starts. He doesn't go get a marketing degree. He hustles his way into the job. And the way he executes is fascinating because he has zero budget.
No Super Bowl commercials for him.
Right. He relies on pure, scrappy mechanics. He starts relentless direct outreach. He identifies every personal finance blogger on the internet and just emails them, offering exclusive beta access.
He creates an artificial wait list to drive up scarcity.
Yes, and a referral engine where you move up the list if you invite friends. Through sheer hustle, he gets Mint 100,000 registered users before the website even officially launches.
A masterclass in zero budget momentum.
Within 6 months, they hit 1 million users. So Aaron offers him a full-time executive gig, $100,000 a year, and a 1% equity stake in the company.
Total validation of his experimental approach.
But here is where the story takes a turn that makes rational people's heads spin. Less than 2 years later, Intuit buys Mint for $170 million.
A massive exit.
But Noah wasn't there to collect his $1.7 million payout because he had already walked away before his 4-year vesting period was up.
We should probably clarify what a vesting cliff is.
Right.
For those not in the startup trenches.
Good idea. Explain the golden handcuffs.
Right. So a vesting cliff is an artificial timeline companies use to lock you in. You don't get your equity all at once. You have to stay for a set number of years to earn those shares. It's designed to keep talent from leaving.
Exactly. So Noah does the math. He realizes his payout would be capped at around $2 million if he stayed for 4 years. And he just leaves. He resigns.
He makes a bet with himself.
Yeah, he bets he can create more money, more daily joy, and more insight by walking away from the golden handcuffs and going back to his chaotic side hustles.
And he was right, by the way. One of those side hustles generated $15 million in revenue very quickly.
But I have to push back here. I'm looking at this decision and it sounds insane. He walked away from guaranteed life-changing money just to go back to experimenting?
I know, it sounds crazy.
Isn't the entire point of a startup to endure the stress so you can finally reach that big payout?
This is where we have to separate the glossy mythology of entrepreneurship from the reality of human happiness. There's a massive danger in tying your self-worth and motivation solely to an end result.
Whether that's a dollar amount or a fancy title.
Yes, because there's always a moving goalpost. It's a psychological phenomenon known as the hedonic treadmill.
Oh, right. Where you just adapt to whatever level you're at.
Exactly. You hit the goal, you feel a massive but incredibly brief spike of dopamine, and then within weeks you adapt. That new wealth is just your baseline normal.
And suddenly you feel empty again, and you need a $10 million goal to feel that high.
Right. What Noah realized in those Mint management meetings was that the math of his personal joy wasn't adding up. Clocking 4 years in middle management just to wait for a payout was draining his soul.
He had fallen in love with the actual day-to-day friction of building, not just the finish line.
He loved the game itself, not just the trophy. That is the crucial distinction. He recognized the real reward was the act of creation.
So if you define your success by the daily actions, talking to customers, running a marketing test, building a product, you maintain infinite motivation.
You're no longer waiting 3 years to permit yourself to be happy. You're succeeding every single day that you actively engage in the process.
That is such a powerful reframe for anyone feeling stuck in a job they hate, just waiting for a bonus. The insight here is to aggressively prioritize the daily process over the end result.
When you're brainstorming ideas, don't just ask what will make the most money.
Right. Ask yourself, what physical and mental activities do I actually enjoy doing on a random Tuesday? Because if you hate the process, you will absolutely burn out before you reach the payout.
And that philosophy leads directly into the mechanics of how we actually execute that process daily. How do you build momentum? Which brings us to arguably the most critical mindset shift in the book.
Yes. The and now, not how mindset. This is where we aggressively contrast the typical entrepreneur with someone who actually gets things built.
We all know someone's stuck in this entrepreneur twilight zone.
Oh, totally. Their instinct whenever they have an idea is to say, this is great, but I need to learn everything about this industry before I move.
So they buy another hardcover business book.
They sign up for a $10 Udemy course on digital marketing. They watch 80 hours of YouTube tutorials on Delaware LLC tax implications.
They spend 3 weeks agonizing over the exact hex code of blue for their logo.
Right. They analyze and prepare and tell themselves they'll act later when they're ready.
And the insidious part is that it feels incredibly productive. Your brain rewards you because you feel busy.
But Noah advocates for the exact opposite approach. Act first, figure the rest out later. Now, not how. And there's this incredible anecdote in the source material about an ad agency.
Oh, I love this story.
Noah's team is on a call with an agency pitching a campaign. The pitch goes well, and the agency rep says, great, give us 24 hours to set up accounts, transfer passwords, and we'll launch tomorrow.
And Noah just stops them.
He says, no, let's do it right now on the call. The agency pushes back, saying it's a process. Noah insists. So they stay on the line, and they do it.
And it took them exactly 5 minutes.
5 minutes. He saved 24 hours of unproductive waiting time by forcing immediate action.
It's a brilliant illustration of momentum versus friction. In business, speed is often a feature, not just a metric.
But I'm looking at this now, not how concept. And part of me is screaming, if I act right this second without figuring out logistics like supply chain or making sure the software doesn't crash, aren't I just being reckless?
It's a valid concern, but it misinterprets the goal. It's not about being negligent or delivering a dangerous product. It's about recognizing the psychological sleight of hand our brains play on us.
What do you mean?
Overthinking and overplanning are very rarely about a genuine, objective need for more information. Almost always, endless preparation is a subconscious defense mechanism.
Designed to avoid the vulnerability of real action.
Precisely. The fear center of your brain wants to keep you safe. If you're in your bedroom designing a logo on Canva for 3 weeks, no customer can ever tell you your product is terrible.
Right, nobody can ask for a refund. You are completely insulated from failure.
But any analysis you do before taking a tangible action in the real market is pure speculation. You're hallucinating what you think the market wants.
So the N now W, not how mindset forces you out of speculation and into reality. It forces a collision with real feedback.
And to break this mental loop, the book introduces this fantastic, terrifying exercise called the dollar challenge.
I absolutely love the dollar challenge. It is so simple but so effective. Let's really dig into how this works.
Mechanically, it is incredibly simple. Emotionally, it is terrifying. You are tasked with walking up to someone you know, a friend, a coworker, and asking them for a single physical dollar as an investment in your future business.
Just one measly dollar. You literally just go up to a friend at lunch and say, hey, I'm starting a business. Will you invest $1 in me right now?
Yes. And the reason it's so vital is that it completely short-circuits the analytical how part of the brain.
Because you can't say, I need a business plan before I ask for a dollar.
Exactly. You don't need a legally formed LLC or a website or a supply chain. You just need to open your mouth and execute the now.
And once you actually force yourself to do it, you realize two profound things.
First, the agonizing anxiety leading up to the ask was 100 times worse than the actual ask. And second, you just generated tangible, real-world momentum.
You took an action, someone gave you $1, and the sky didn't fall. You survived the vulnerability.
It proves to your nervous system that action is safe.
So for you listening right now, the next time you catch your inner negotiator whispering, I just need a little more time to prepare, or I should read one more article, stop. Catch yourself in that lie.
Recognize it as a defense mechanism.
Force yourself to take one micro action. Ask a friend for $1. Send the pitch email right this second, even if the phrasing isn't perfect. Dial the vendor. Do not worry about the how until the now is complete.
Because action produces real information. Preparation only produces assumptions.
That is the perfect distillation of the concept. Okay, we are moving into the final key structural idea here, and this is the absolute anchor.
Because if you're taking all this rapid-fire action, you need to know what you're actually aiming for.
Exactly. If you don't have a target, momentum is just spinning your wheels. And that's where the concept of the freedom number completely rewires goal setting.
It replaces the grand paralyzing illusion of startup success with a highly pragmatic reality.
Because right now, everything culturally revolves around the BHAG, right? The big, hairy, audacious goal. You're conditioned to say, I want to build a billion-dollar unicorn, or I want 20 million liquid by age 40.
And if your goal isn't massive, people treat you like you aren't ambitious enough.
But Noah suggests ignoring all of that. He says you need to calculate your freedom number. You calculate the exact minimum monthly revenue you need to just cover baseline living expenses and secure your personal freedom.
For someone, that might mean exactly $3,000 a month so they can quit the corporate job they despise.
Right. For someone else who just wants to prove they can generate independent income, it might be $100 a month, just enough to pay for one nice dinner out.
It completely strips the ego and the societal performance out of the process. It makes it about utility.
It makes me think about driving a car cross-country in the pitch dark.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
If you're driving 3,000 miles from New York to LA, you don't need headlights that illuminate the entire North American continent all at once. That would be blinding and literally impossible.
You just need headlights that clearly illuminate the next 200 feet of asphalt.
Exactly. A massive abstract goal like make $10 million blinds you. The freedom number just lights up the next 200 feet so you can put your foot on the gas.
And what's happening underneath the surface there is a psychological masterstroke. A massive goal creates an enormous amount of temporal distance and cognitive abstraction.
Meaning it's so far away that your brain feels zero immediate urgency.
Exactly. It creates a safe space to procrastinate. You tell yourself, well, it's a 20-year plan, so watching Netflix tonight won't hurt the timeline.
The goal is too big to act on today.
But a low, hyper-concrete freedom number like needing $3,000 by the end of the month for rent is immediately actionable. It shifts your framework from passive dreaming to active problem solving.
Your brain stops asking, how do I build a global empire? And starts asking, what specific service can I offer someone today to make $100?
It distills all your vague motivations into a singular, urgent target.
It takes the impossible and makes it mundane, which is exactly the psychological state you need to be in. So do not wait on this. Calculate your freedom number today.
Sit down tonight, look at your rent, your groceries, your utilities.
Figure out the exact monthly revenue that gives you empowerment or lets you walk away from a toxic boss. Write that dollar amount down. Put it on a piece. Post it on your mirror. Make it your sole focus.
Because once you hit that freedom number, the mysterious mechanics of making money are permanently demystified.
The hardest part is going from 0 to 1. Going from your freedom number to $1 million is just scaling the exact same mechanics you already learned.
We have covered an incredible amount of ground today, pulling from Noah's raw failures, his experimentation, the tactical frameworks.
Let's pull all these threads together to see the whole picture.
If we synthesize everything we've analyzed from this chapter, it coalesces into one resonant insight. You will never, ever feel 100% ready.
It's biologically impossible to feel completely prepared for the unknown.
The fear will always be there. But the profound realization is that who you are, the resources you have, and the knowledge you possess right at this exact moment, it is already enough to begin.
Business isn't a standardized test where you need to know all the theory before you play.
It is a messy, joyful cycle of starting, failing, extracting data, and trying again.
And you past failures, even the spectacular ones where you're called a liability or you can't do basic math on a whiteboard, those aren't liabilities at all. They are just the expensive tuition you paid for real-world education.
And the best time to apply those lessons isn't tomorrow. It isn't after you finish another course. The time is right now.
Because the invisible cost of inaction, the life you don't live because you were too afraid to try, is always infinitely higher than the cost of a failed micro-experiment.
Absolutely.
So now that we've hopefully bypassed that paralyzing fear of starting, and you're fired up to take aggressive action with the NOW not how mindset, it raises a brand new, intimidating challenge.
And the inevitable wall.
What happens when you do take that brave action? You put yourself out there and you are immediately met with a resounding, painful no.
The fear of rejection.
Exactly. Join us on your own mental journey moving forward as you consider how facing down that intense fear of rejection learning to actively hunt for it might just be the most potent, untapped superpower you can possibly develop. Because remember, the landscape is messy, and the only way to navigate the muddy waters is to just foo and start.
What if the only thing standing between you and the life you've always dreamed of isn't like a brilliant idea?
Right.
What if it isn't a massive bank account or an Ivy League degree or, I don't know, the perfect pitch deck? What if the only thing keeping you from that next level is simply your willingness to look a little foolish and get laughed at?
It's honestly the ultimate paradox of success. We spend years, sometimes literally decades, right, acquiring skills and, polishing our resumes, perfecting our products. We're just completely convinced that competence is the barrier to entry.
Yeah, exactly. We think we just aren't good enough yet.
Right. But the reality, the biggest graveyard of million-dollar businesses, it isn't a lack of capital, and it certainly isn't a lack of talent. It is just the overwhelming, totally paralyzing fear of hearing the word no.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, think about that for a second. So today we are going to completely dismantle those psychological blocks that keep you from launching your dreams or starting that business, or honestly, just asking for what you actually deserve.
Yeah, we're really getting into the weeds on this one.
We are. We're taking a deep dive into the core concepts from the book $1 Million Weekend. Specifically, we're focusing on this incredible chapter called The Unlimited Upside of Asking. Get a gold medal in rejection.
Which is just such a great title.
It really is. So for everyone listening, in this deep dive, you're going to learn how to fundamentally rewire your brain to treat rejection as a superpower. Whether you're like an aspiring entrepreneur or a professional eyeing a promotion or just someone who wants to stop leaving opportunities on the table, you are about to learn how to build your ask muscle.
And I think it's important to set the tone here, right? This isn't just some theoretical lecture. We're talking about a highly practical, step-by-step unlearning of basically everything society has taught us about social risk.
Right, because society teaches us to play it safe, to never be annoying.
Exactly.
So to understand how deep this runs, picture this. There's this young kid, maybe 7 or 8 years old, and he's trailing behind his dad on a hot afternoon.
Just a classic childhood memory.
Right. And the dad is an immigrant. He sells copiers. And he has this incredibly thick Israeli accent. In the source material, the author, Noah Kagan, describes his dad's voice as sounding like Arnold Schwarzenegger crossed with a bowl of hummus.
Which is just the most vivid description ever.
It paints such a picture, right? So they're walking into local shops, completely unannounced, just raw, cold approaches.
Which honestly, if you've ever worked in any form of sales, you know is the absolute hardest, most grueling form of human interaction.
Hmm.
Just walking into a stranger's territory and demanding their attention.
Oh, it's pure friction, like
Yeah.
terrifying. And his dad would just enthusiastically boom at these local business owners. He'd walk right in, point at their machine and say something like, "You live in greatest country in world, you have greatest business on this street, but you still have a crappy copier. Why? I must help you. Here, I have much better. Let me show you."
The sheer audacity of that is brilliant, but I mean, you can only imagine the response rate he got.
Oh, it was exactly what you expect. Brutal, store after store. Just, "No, get out," or "No, we're busy. No, we don't want whatever you're selling." And as a kid, watching your parent go through this,
It has to be traumatic on some level.
yeah, Noah describes it as a full-body cringe. Like his muscles would physically tighten up. He was completely crushed. He felt just demoralized by every single no his dad took to the chin. But here's the wild part. At the end of that day, the dad was ecstatic.
Why?
Because out of dozens and dozens of rejections, he sold 2 copiers in one single afternoon.
Wow. Which is actually a monumental victory in the context of cold calling office equipment.
Huge.
But there's this massive disconnect happening here between the father and the son. Like, the father is operating on pure mathematics, but the son is operating on evolutionary biology.
Ooh, okay, let's dig into that.
Yeah.
Because I think that biological response is exactly what you and I and everyone listening feels when we think about like asking for a raise or pitching a client. Why does it physically hurt to watch someone else, let alone ourselves, get rejected?
Well, it's because our brains are essentially ancient hardware trying to run modern software.
Right.
For hundreds of thousands of years, humans survived by being part of a tribe.
Ah,
If you were a hunter-gatherer and you did something foolish or you annoyed the group or broke a social norm, the tribe would reject you. And back in the Pleistocene era, being ostracized from the tribe didn't just mean you had a bad afternoon, it meant you starved to death.
or you got eaten by a predator.
Exactly. So social rejection literally equaled death.
That's intense.
Yeah,
But it makes
because-
so much sense.
And, neuroscience backs this up beautifully. When we experience social rejection, there's a part of the brain called the anterior cingulate cortex that lights up. Do you know what else that exact same region processes?
Let me guess. Physical pain.
Yes, exactly. Physical pain. When you burn your hand on a stove or when someone looks you in the eye and says, "Your idea is terrible, get out of my office," your brain is literally firing the exact same alarm bells.
So it's not a metaphor. It actually hurts.
It actually hurts. It's experiencing the rejection as a physical threat to your survival. So when the kid is watching his dad get yelled at by store owners, his ancient brain is screaming, "We are being kicked out of the tribe. We're gonna die."
But the dad has somehow, like, manually overridden that ancient hardware. He takes his kid out for burritos to celebrate the 2 sales, and the kid is sitting there totally miserable asking, "Doesn't all that rejection make you want to quit?"
Right.
And the dad drops a piece of advice that completely shifts the paradigm. He tells him to love the rejections, to collect them like treasure.
Collect them like treasure. I love that phrasing.
Right. He explains that he actively sets a goal to get 100 rejections a week because he knows mathematically that buried inside those 100 no's are the few yeses that pay for the burritos, the rent, and their entire life.
See, he detached the no from his personal identity. And that's so hard to do because society spends a lot of time conditioning us to view a no as a character assessment.
100%.
If they say no, we immediately think, it means I'm bad, my idea is flawed, I am unworthy. But the father, and perhaps because he was an immigrant and wasn't bogged down by all the invisible, unwritten rules of American corporate politeness, he was free to see it for what it actually was.
Which is just a data point.
Exactly. It's a data point.
It's an immigrant superpower, really.
Yeah.
Like, when you don't know what you aren't supposed to do, you are free to just ask for anything. You're naive to the social constraints, which turns out to be an incredible competitive advantage.
It is a massive advantage. He realized that a no isn't a stock sign. It's the work of sifting. Like, if you are panning for gold, you don't get offended by the dirt and the gravel.
Yeah, you don't yell at the dirt.
No. You
Yeah.
have to wash away 100 pounds of gravel to find the 1 ounce of gold. The rejections are just the gravel.
So if you're listening to this and you're agonizing over a client telling you no, or maybe a girl turning you down for a date, you are fundamentally playing the wrong game. You're treating the gravel like it's a personal insult, rather than just recognizing it as the necessary byproduct of finding the gold.
Which forces a completely different way of looking at risk. If rejection is just a numbers game, like a sifting process, we have to talk about what the math of that process actually looks like.
Okay, let's talk about the math.
Because the math heavily, almost unfairly, favors the person who is actually willing to ask.
Unfairly favors them. Okay, I want to test this theory of the math with what might be the most absurd, totally mind-blowing example of human interaction I have ever heard.
I think I know where you're going with this.
Have you ever dug into the story of Kyle McDonald?
Oh, the red paperclip trades. Yeah, it's a legendary case study in asymmetric risk.
It sounds totally made up, but it's entirely real. So Kyle McDonald starts with a single, ordinary red paperclip sitting on his desk, and he decides he wants to trade it for something slightly bigger or better.
It's just for fun.
Yeah. So he goes online and he asks. He makes a trade, and then he takes the new item, and he asks again. Someone trades him a fish-shaped pen for the paperclip.
Right.
Then he trades the pen for a hand-sculpted doorknob, then the doorknob for a camping stove, and he just keeps asking. Just, hey, will you trade this for that?
The audacity to just keep asking is amazing.
It really is.
Really.
Do you know how many times he had to ask, like, how many trades it actually took to get from a red paperclip to a literal physical house?
I mean, you'd think thousands. But it's a shockingly low number.
14. 14 moments of extending his hand and saying, will you agree to this?
Yeah.
And he ended up with a house, a real 2-story farmhouse in Saskatchewan.
It's crazy. But the mechanics of those 14 trades perfectly illustrate the core concept we need to unpack here, which is the asymmetry of risk.
Break that down for us. What does asymmetric risk really mean in this context?
Well, in finance, an asymmetric bet is one where the potential downside is strictly capped and minimal, but the potential upside is explosive and virtually unlimited.
So let's apply that to asking a question. Let's play out the absolute worst case scenario for Kyle. He goes to someone and says, hey, I had this Coleman camping stove. Will you trade me your Honda generator for it? What happens if they say no?
Think about the physics of that moment. What actually happens in reality?
Not much, right?
Exactly. The person looks at him, maybe scoffs, and says, no, a stove for a generator is a terrible deal. Sound waves travel through the air. They hit Kyle's eardrum. His brain processes the word no. He might feel a transient spike of cortisol. His cheeks might get a little warm. He feels maybe 3 to 5 seconds of profound social awkwardness. And then the interaction ends.
That's it. That is the catastrophic downside we are all so terrified of.
Yeah.
Vibrating air and a 5-second flush of the cheeks.
Right. He didn't lose his life savings. He didn't lose a limb. Within 10 minutes, the other person has completely forgotten Kyle even exists. The floor, the absolute worst-case scenario, is practically zero.
But look at the upside. What happens if the vibrating air molecules form the word yes?
Then the ceiling is infinite. For Kyle, the upside was literally a house. But for you listening, the upside could be a life-changing promotion. It could be landing an angel investor for your startup, or securing a mentor who completely changes the trajectory of your career. The best-case scenario alters the very fabric of your life.
So if we take the emotion out of it and just look at the raw logic, on one hand, your potential loss is a momentary feeling of embarrassment. On the other hand, your potential gain is an exponential life improvement.
Yeah, and when you calculate that math, you realize something startling. Not asking is actually the most dangerous, irrational choice you can possibly make.
Wow. Okay, let me just pause there. Not asking is the irrational choice.
Completely irrational.
We usually think of the person making the bold ask as the crazy risk taker. Like, oh, they're so brave, they're taking a huge gamble. But you're saying the person staying quiet in the corner is actually making a terrible mathematical bet.
They're choosing a guaranteed 0% return on their life simply to avoid a fleeting neurochemical response. They are trading their entire future for 5 seconds of comfort today. It's a terrible investment strategy for a human life.
I understand the logic. I really do. The math is totally undeniable. But I have to push back here because it feels like we're doing a lot of intellectualizing.
Fair enough.
It's easy for us to sit behind these microphones and say, hey, it's just vibrating air, get over it. But the reality is getting rejected really hurts. Like we said, the anterior cingulate cortex doesn't care about your asymmetric risk calculations. It just knows you feel like garbage.
Right.
So how do we actually cross that chasm? Because clearly, just knowing the math isn't enough to make people take action.
That is a crucial distinction. Intellectual understanding rarely overrides visceral fear, and the data bears this out in a really profound way.
What data?
Well, if we look at the cohorts of people trying to launch businesses specifically, we're talking about a massive sample size of over 10,000 students from a business creation course called Monthly 1K, We see exactly where the bottleneck is.
10,000 people. That's a huge data set. What
Yeah.
stopped them?
Yeah.
Because you'd assume it was like technical hurdles. They couldn't figure out supply chain logistics, or they didn't know how to code a website or optimize their Facebook ads.
That's what everyone guesses. But the data showed that the #1 thing holding thousands of aspiring entrepreneurs back was something coined as ask avoidance.
Ask avoidance. Just the sheer inability to open your mouth and initiate the transaction.
Right. There's a subtle but vital philosophical shift here regarding how value is exchanged in the world. People think about getting money or getting a job, but getting implies a passive occurrence, like it just happens to you.
Like catching a cold.
Exactly. But the reality is about receiving. And you cannot receive unless you actively open the loop by asking. You can build the most elegant software solution in the world. You can paint an absolute masterpiece. But if you suffer from ask avoidance, it will slowly rot in your garage.
No one is going to magically kick your door down and force their money into your pockets.
Well, they aren't.
You have to extend your hand. But again, how do we bridge that gap, even for the people who preach this stuff? The serial entrepreneurs, the billionaires, does the fear just magically vanish one day? Do they become immune to the sting?
No. And I think that's the most liberating realization of this whole deep dive. The goal isn't to eradicate the fear.
It isn't.
No. Fearlessness is largely a myth sold by productivity gurus. The actual goal is to build a framework to act despite the fear. Consider how Noah Kagan himself handles this. He is incredibly vulnerable in the book about the fact that even after building multiple million-dollar companies, he still gets scared. He still gets sad when someone says no.
Yeah. There's a very raw story about him trying to recruit top-tier talent for his company early on. He was looking for a designer, and he was spending 6 to 8 hours a day just cold emailing people.
Which psychologically is like walking into a wind tunnel of rejection.
Yeah.
8 hours a day of throwing your hope into the void.
And he finally gets a reply from a designer he desperately wanted, someone whose work he really admired. He opens the email, hoping for a conversation, and the reply is just vicious.
Oh, it's brutal.
The designer wrote, literally, "Ha ha ha, you really think I would leave Google for your shitty company?"
That is a fascinating response. Notice that it's not a polite, no thank you, I'm happy at my current role. It is a targeted, ego-driven attack designed to demean the person asking.
It's an intentional gut punch.
Mm-hmm.
And Noah admits that it hurt. He wanted to cry. He felt that evolutionary panic of being rejected by a high-status member of the tribe.
Because he's in a robot, he felt the pain.
Exactly. But what he did next is what separates the people who build empires from the people who quit. He has this mental coping mechanism that is so morbid, yet so incredibly practical.
It's an injection of pure existentialism right into the sales process.
Yes. When he gets a soul-crushing email like that, he pauses, he takes a breath, and actively reminds himself, I am going to die eventually.
Let's unpack why that works, because on the surface, honestly, it sounds depressing.
It sounds super dark.
Right. But cognitively, it is a brilliant reframing technique.
He tells himself, I'm going to die. I'm going to be in a box in the ground. And is this guy, this designer from Google who just called my company shitty, is he going to come to my funeral? Is he going to be standing over my grave weeping? No, he wouldn't even know I died.
See, what he is doing is forcibly shrinking the perceived authority of the rejecting party. When we get rejected, our ego tends to elevate the person saying no onto a pedestal. We suddenly give them supreme authority over our self-worth. But by reminding himself of his own mortality and by highlighting the absolute insignificance of this designer in the grand narrative of his life, he strips away all of their power.
You won't be at my funeral, so your opinion of my life's work today literally does not matter. It's incredibly liberating. You go from feeling crushed to almost laughing at the absurdity of caring what a stranger on the internet thinks.
The psychological payload here for the listener is vital. Stop trying to find a hack to make rejection painless.
It doesn't exist.
That hack does not exist, and stop waiting for the day when you feel fearless enough to make the ask, because that day will never arrive. You just need to expect the sting, contextualize it within the brevity of your own life, and then force yourself to open your mouth anyway.
I love that. Expect it to hurt. Give yourself permission to feel the sting, but strip away the suffering. But, relying on raw existential willpower every single day sounds exhausting. Like if I have to meditate on my own death every time I send a cold email, I'm going to burn out.
Oh, for sure. You'd be exhausted by noon.
Right. So how do we build a sustainable system? How do we train the brain to actually lean into this friction without having an existential crisis every Tuesday.
This is where we transition from philosophy to behavioral psychology. You have to actively gamify your failures. You have to literally change the reward structure in your brain.
Gamifying failure. Okay, this circles back to the concept of rejection goals that the copier salesman used. Walk me through the mechanics of this. How do you gamify getting punched in the ego?
Well, it requires flipping the traditional metric of success entirely upside down. Think about how we normally set goals, right? You say, my goal today is to close one sale, or my goal is to get this person to agree to a meeting. The fundamental flaw with that goal structure is that the outcome, the yes, is entirely out of your control.
That's true.
You cannot force another human being to agree with you.
Right. I can give the best pitch in the world, have the best slide deck, but if they don't have the budget, they are going to say no.
Exactly. And when they say no, because you set your goal as getting a yes, you feel like a failure.
Yeah.
Your brain registers a loss, your dopamine crashes, your motivation plummets. Rejection goals solve this by changing the objective to something you actually can control, your own output.
So instead of aiming for a yes, you wake up and say, my goal today is to collect 25 no's.
Yes.
This is so counterintuitive. You are literally hunting for rejection.
You are. And the psychological shift is profound. Let's say you make your first cold call. They hang up on you. A no. Under the old system, you're crushed. But under the new system, what just happened?
I just scored a point. I'm one step closer to my goal of 25.
Exactly. You just triggered a dopamine release for getting rejected. You are actively desensitizing yourself to the pain by deliberately seeking it out. In psychology, this is called exposure therapy. You are proving to your nervous system over and over that the perceived threat isn't actually real.
That makes total sense. You are taking back control of the metric. There is a legendary story about this exact mindset regarding Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx.
Yes.
She is a self-made billionaire, and she credits her entire empire to how her father conditioned her to view failure when she was a kid.
The dinner table routine. It's a masterclass in parenting for resilience.
It really is. So every single week, her dad would sit Sarah and her brother down at the dinner table, and instead of asking the standard parental questions like, what did you learn today? Or what did you get an A on? He would look at them and ask, what did you guys fail at this week?
Think about the neural pathways he was building in those children's brains. He was completely decoupling failure from shame.
And he would actually be disappointed if they didn't have a failure to report. Like if Sarah said, I didn't fail at anything this week, Dad, he would be upset. Because to him, a lack of failure meant a lack of effort. It meant she had stayed perfectly inside her comfort zone. She hadn't pushed the boundaries of what she was capable of.
He taught them that failure wasn't an endpoint. It was just the evidence of exertion.
I think about it exactly like strength training. If you go to the gym to lift weights, your goal is not to avoid muscle fatigue. You don't pick up a dumbbell, do 2 reps, feel a little burn, and say, oh, wow, my muscles are getting tired. I better put this down immediately to protect them.
No, if you do that, you are completely wasting your time. You go to the gym specifically to chase that fatigue. You lift until you reach muscular failure.
You chase the burn because you understand the biological mechanism. The microscopic tearing of those muscle fibers, the literal failure of the muscle under stress, is the exact mechanism that signals the body to rebuild that muscle denser and stronger.
Right.
Asking is a muscle. Rejection is the gym. If you are not feeling the burn of rejection on a regular basis, your ask muscle is atrophying. You are getting weaker.
And if we map this gym analogy back onto business or career progression, the implications are just stark. Let's say you decide to launch a freelance writing business. You need clients. You set a goal to pitch your services. You get rejected once, twice, 3 times. By rejection number 10, the ego fatigue is immense.
It hurts.
It hurts. You feel embarrassed. Your inner critic is screaming at you. So you decide to stop. You quit.
And you tell yourself, well, I failed because 10 people told me no. The market has spoken. My writing just isn't good enough.
But that is a complete misinterpretation of the data. The true failure isn't the 10 no's. The true failure is the statistical probability that your life-changing client, your massive yes, was waiting for you at ask number 11.
Wow.
But because you stopped, because you couldn't handle the burn, you guaranteed the failure. By gamifying the rejections, by aiming for 25 no's, you ensure you have the stamina to survive the variance of probability until you hit a yes.
So the immediate practical takeaway here for you listening. Before this day is over, write down a rejection quota for this week. Tell yourself, I need to get 5 people to explicitly tell me no to a request, and then go out and hunt those no's. It completely shifts your posture from defensive to offensive.
It turns you into the initiator.
Okay, so we've covered the internal game. We are willing to ask. We understand the asymmetry of the math. We've gamified the failure, and we are hunting for the no. But let's talk about the actual mechanics of the interaction.
We'll follow through.
Right. What happens after the no? I go out, I ask for a deal, they say no. Do I just tally my score, smile, and walk away? Because it feels like if I just accept the first rejection, I'm leaving a lot of opportunity on the table.
And you definitely would be. This brings us to a critical pivot in the methodology. Once you have built the emotional armor to withstand the initial rejection, you have to learn the rules of engagement. How do you maneuver once the asking begins? There are 3 core rules, or pro tips, for turning the ask into a permanent, highly effective habit. And rule 1 is about redefining what the word no actually means in a professional context. Rule 1 is persistence. Understanding that no usually just means not right now.
This is huge, because we treat no like a locked steel door when it's often just a beaded curtain. There's a story that perfectly illustrates this, going back to Noah when he was a junior at UC Berkeley.
Oh, the Microsoft story.
Yes, his absolute burning dream was to work at Microsoft. He wanted it more than anything. So Microsoft sends a recruiter to the Berkeley campus. He walks right up to her and asks if there's an internship available for someone on the business side rather than a software engineer.
A direct, unsolicited ask. What happened?
She shoots him down instantly. She says, no, flat out, we don't have that. Now, 99.9% of people at this point say, okay, thank you so much for your time. They walk away, they feel a little sting, and they give up on the dream. They accept the no as absolute reality.
Because that's what we're taught to do. Be polite and leave.
Exactly. But he applies rule 1. He remembered this old advice from his mom. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. So he didn't walk away. He followed up.
He persisted. But let's clarify what persistence means here, because there's a fine line between being persistent and being a stalker.
Fair point. He didn't harass her. But he didn't let it go either. He followed up 12 times.
12 times.
12 separate interactions where he went back to this recruiter who had already explicitly told him no. Squeak, squeak, squeak. And finally, after the 12th ask, she relented. She looked at him and said, actually, we have an internship for business people.
Incredible.
He literally says he doesn't even know if the internship actually existed,
Yeah.
or she just created it out of thin air to get him to stop emailing her. But the result, he got the job and eventually led to him having lunch at Bill Gates' house.
The psychology of the person being asked is fascinating here. We need to understand why the recruiter changed her mind. The first no from anyone is almost always an automatic reflex. Think about your own life. When someone stops you on the street or cold emails you, your default defense mechanism is no. You are protecting your time and resources from an unexpected demand.
It's not a deeply considered rejection. It's just a shield.
Exactly. It's a shield.
Yeah.
But when you persist, when you follow up respectfully but firmly, providing a bit more context or value each time you shatter that reflex, you demonstrate conviction. You signal to the other person, I am not a casual passing inquiry. I am deeply invested in this.
Yeah.
You force their brain to move out of reflex mode and actually evaluate your request logically. You move from being a nuisance to being a dedicated force.
Which bleeds perfectly into rule 2, the staggering mathematical power of the follow-up. The data on this is enough to make you sick if you think about all the times you've given up. The research shows that a follow-up ask is twice as likely to get a yes as the initial ask.
Let that statistic sink in for a moment. The second time you ask for the exact same thing, your odds of success double.
And looking at real-world business data, at AppSumo, a company doing massive 8-figure volume, nearly 50% of their total sales come from follow-up emails. Not the first email, the second, third, or fourth.
50%, half of their entire revenue. This raises an incredibly uncomfortable question for everyone listening. Think about your own life. Think about every client you've pitched, every time you asked for a raise, every partnership you tried to build. If you accepted their first no, or if you sent one email and they didn't reply, so you just assumed they hated you and you walked away, you mathematically left half of your potential success on the table.
It's awful to think about.
Half of your revenue, half of your career progression literally vanished into the ether simply because you didn't have the stomach to send one more email.
It's sickening. It really is. It makes you realize how many dreams are quietly abandoned in the empty space between the first ask and the first follow-up. But why? If the math is so clear, double the success, 50% more revenue, why is it so incredibly hard for us to follow up?
Because following up requires you to voluntarily walk back into the fire. The first ask requires a burst of courage, sure, but the follow-up requires enduring vulnerability. When you follow up after silence, your brain is telling you they are ignoring you because they don't like you. You feel pushy, you feel aggressive.
And this brings us to the biggest objection, the absolute biggest roadblock I hear from people. And it's what Rule 3 addresses head on. People say, I know I should follow up. I know I should push. But I don't want to feel sleazy. I don't want to be the annoying used car salesman bothering people who just want to be left alone.
It's the fear of being an imposition.
Exactly. But I have to be honest, I struggle with this one myself. The common advice is to reframe selling as helping. Selling is education. But hold on, if I'm a web designer and I'm pushing a local coffee shop to buy a $5,000 website from me, I'm trying to make money off them. Calling it education or helping feels a bit like a mental gymnastics routine. It feels like a convenient lie I tell myself to justify my invoice. How do you reconcile that?
That is a phenomenal pushback, and it hits at the core of the ethical friction of business. Let's dismantle the mental gymnastics idea. It only feels like a lie if you don't fundamentally believe your product is worth $5,000 to that coffee shop.
Okay, unpack that for me.
Rule 3 requires a brutal, honest assessment of the value you provide. Let's stick with your web design example. If you are selling them a generic, poorly coded template that won't actually bring them any new foot traffic, then yes, following up 12 times is sleazy. You are extracting value without providing it.
Right.
But what if you are exceptionally good at your job? What if you know for a mathematical fact that your redesign will increase their online orders by 30%, adding $20,000 to their bottom line this year?
Then my $5,000 invoice is actually a bargain.
Exactly. If you genuinely believe you possess a solution to their problem, if you know you can save their struggling business, then hiding that solution from them because you are afraid of feeling pushy isn't polite. It is actually selfish. Yes, you are prioritizing your own emotional comfort over their business's survival.
Wow. Okay, that flips the script entirely.
Noah frames it as a moral obligation. If you have a cure for a disease, you don't whisper it once and walk away if they don't hear you. You shout it. When you view your ask through the lens of service, when your absolute primary motivation is to solve their problem, the hesitation vanishes. Selling becomes an act of communal education. You are not begging them for a favor. You are offering them a gift.
So the friction isn't really about the act of asking. It's about a lack of conviction in what you're offering.
Right.
When my belief in my value is absolute, the follow-up isn't me being a nuisance. It's me being negligent if I don't follow up. Like, hey, you didn't see my first email and I need to make sure you understand how much money you're losing by not fixing this.
Precisely. It changes your tone, your posture, and your persistence.
Okay, let's summarize these rules of engagement before we move on. Rule 1. No usually just means not now, so don't treat it as a locked door. Rule 2. You must follow up religiously because the math proves that half your success lives in the second attempt. And Rule 3. You must view your asks as acts of education and service, not selfish demands.
Which brings us to the crux of this entire deep dive. We have discussed the philosophy, we have broken down the math of asymmetric risk, we've explored the neuroscience and the psychology, but as we know, theory is entirely useless without application.
Yep.
Reading about push-ups won't make you stronger.
You actually have to get on the floor and do a push-up. And the source material we are looking at provides a highly specific, real-world exercise. It is designed to instantly shatter your ask avoidance and force you to put all of this into practice today.
It is the ultimate crucible for building the ask muscle. It's called the coffee challenge. Over 10,000 people have been put through this specific protocol.
And having looked at it, it is terrifying, like genuinely sweat-inducing.
Yeah.
Let's break down the exact mechanics of this challenge because the devil is in the details here. The specific constraints are what make it work.
Here is the exact scenario. Within the next 24 hours, you are going to walk into a coffee shop or a bakery or any local retail environment. You wait in line, you step up to the counter, you order your usual item, a coffee, a bagel, whatever.
Say a skinny, low-fat vanilla latte.
Right. The cashier rings it up and says, that will be $4.50. And then you do the challenge.
You look them in the eye, you smile politely, and you ask one simple question. Can I get 10% off?
Now, here are the non-negotiable rules. You must state the question clearly, no mumbling. You must maintain a friendly demeanor. And this is where 90% of people fail the challenge.
No.
You must close your mouth and say absolutely nothing else.
The silence. The excruciating, agonizing silence. Oh my God, just thinking about it makes my heart rate elevate. You are standing there having just asked for a completely unjustified, illogical discount on a cup of coffee, and you just stare at them.
Why is the silence so important? Let's analyze the psychology of that exact moment.
Because nature abhors a vacuum, and human beings abhor social awkwardness even more. The natural biological urge in that 5 seconds of silence is to instantly alleviate the tension. You want to fill the void with justifications. You want to laugh nervously and say, oh, just kidding, or I have a coupon here somewhere.
Yeah.
You want to let the barista off the hook, but more importantly, you desperately want to let yourself off the hook.
Exactly. The silence is the actual gym where the muscle is built. If you immediately backtrack, you drop the weight. You have to hold the tension. You have to let the awkwardness wash over you and realize that it isn't killing you.
Now, let's role play the expected outcome here, because the barista is going to be incredibly confused. It's just you, a barista named Chad, and the hum of the espresso machine. Chad looks at you, blinks, and says, why? Are you a senior citizen? Are you an employee? What do you do?
You are allowed an out script. You simply reply, I'm taking a business course and this is one of the assignments, or I'm working on getting out of my comfort zone.
But here is the crucial twist that I need everyone listening to fully grasp. The goal of this challenge is not to get the 10% discount.
Right.
In fact, if Chad says, sure, whatever, here's 45 cents off, you actually kind of failed the exercise. The challenge is specifically, surgically designed for you to get rejected.
It is a controlled exposure to failure. You are orchestrating a scenario where the probability of a no is nearly 100%.
You walk in wanting them to shoot you down because you need your ancient lizard brain to experience what happens next. Chad says, no, I can't do that. And what happens? The ceiling doesn't cave in. The police aren't called. No one in line behind you points and laughs. You just say, okay, no problem. Hand over your credit card, pay the normal price, and walk out with your coffee.
And in that moment, the illusion shatters. The monster in the closet is revealed to be a pile of laundry.
It's profound. The testimonials from people who actually execute this challenge are wild. Think about Dieter S. from the book. He was terrified of asking for money for a project. He forced himself to do the coffee challenge. He took the rejection. And the realization that it wasn't that bad gave him the immediate psychological momentum to go out and secure actual corporate sponsorship money for a bike riding hustle he was building.
The confidence is perfectly transferable.
Completely transferable. Or Jennifer Jones, who described herself as insanely shy. Doing this one awkward thing rewired her baseline for risk. Or Jason Blake, who literally said the exercise taught him that rejection doesn't end your life, and he actually started to enjoy the feeling of being outside his comfort zone.
It is critical to note that these were not people who were born with some inherent, creator's courage. They weren't naturally bold extroverts. They were terrified. But they manufactured their courage through deliberate, highly uncomfortable microactions.
So listener, this is my direct, unavoidable appeal to you. I know exactly what your brain is doing right this second as you listen to my voice. It is actively generating excuses to protect you. You are thinking, this is too basic for me, or I don't drink coffee, so I can't do it.
Or, I already know how to sell. I don't need a parlor trick.
Or, I don't want to make the poor barista feel uncomfortable.
All defense mechanisms. All manifestations of ask avoidance disguised as rational logic.
Do not let your brain logic its way out of the discomfort. Do not negotiate with your fear. Within the next 24 hours, you need to go do this. Buy a coffee, buy a pack of gum, buy a newspaper. Look the cashier in the eye, smile, ask for 10% off, and hold the silence. Feel your heart rate spike. Let your palms sweat. Take the rejection. Smile. Pay full price, and walk out a fundamentally different person.
If we tie all of these threads together, the immigrant copier salesman, Kyle McDonald's paperclip, the graveyard of unasked questions, and the coffee challenge, a very singular, memorable insight emerges. Rejection is not a barrier to your success. It is not a wall designed by the universe to keep you out.
It's not a stop sign.
It is the required currency you must pay to achieve your dreams. Every great outcome in life has a price tag, and that price is paid in the denomination of no's.
You literally buy your success with your rejections. That is such a powerful synthesis. The people who launch the massive businesses, the people who land the dream jobs, the people who seem to have all the luck in their relationships, they aren't necessarily the smartest people in the room. They aren't the best looking, and they aren't the most well-funded. They are simply the individuals who have built the highest tolerance for social friction.
But they just out-survived the awkwardness. They recognize the asymmetry of the game. The upside is infinite, and the downside is just a fleeting moment of vibrating air.
They collected enough gravel to eventually find the gold. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a forward-looking provocative thought. I want this to buzz around in your head for the rest of the day. Think about everything you want in your life right now. The business you've been outlining in your notebook for 2 years, the career pivot you desperately want to make, the relationship you want to initiate, the raise you know, mathematically, you deserve.
Think about the gap between where you are and where that reality exists.
What if the exact thing you are wishing for, the thing you have been agonizing over, losing sleep over, plotting and planning for, what if it's just sitting there, fully formed, waiting for you on the other side of 10 seconds of awkward courage?
10 seconds. That is the entire lifespan of the risk.
Your only job today is to go out and get rejected. Intentionally, purposefully, joyfully. Because once you conquer the fear of asking, once you prove to your nervous system that the worst-case scenario is just a polite no, there are no limits left on what you can build. We will leave you with that to chew on. And the next time we dive in, we're going to look at how to take this newfound courage, this absolute fearlessness, and use it to rapidly validate your million-dollar ideas in the real market before you spend a single dime of your own money. Until then, go get that gold medal in rejection.
What if everything you've been taught about starting a business is just entirely backwards?
Oh, I mean, it usually is, right?
Seriously, like, think about the traditional narrative we are all fed. You're supposed to, lock yourself in a garage for 6 months.
Right.
You spend your entire savings, draft this, 50-page business plan that literally no one will ever read, and invent some brilliant, never-before-seen product.
The lonely visionary myth.
Exactly. You are supposed to be the lonely visionary. But what if the secret to a 7-figure business is actually hiding in, well, the things that annoy you every single day?
It's so much simpler than people think.
Right. What if you could mathematically prove an idea is a massive winner by this weekend without spending a single dime?
It completely shatters the mythology of the entrepreneur, doesn't it?
It really does.
We're so conditioned to believe that business is about having this genius idea that strikes you like lightning.
Yeah, the light bulb moment.
Exactly. But when you look closely at how successful modern businesses actually start, it's rarely about invention in a vacuum. It's about finding existing demand and simply satisfying it.
Which is exactly what we're getting into today. We are exploring the customer-first approach.
A total game changer.
It really is. It's a framework that proves why building a product before you've sold it is actually like the most dangerous thing an entrepreneur can do.
Absolutely lethal to a new business.
Right. It completely removes the financial ruin, the wasted time, and, that crushing emotional burnout that so many people associate with starting something new.
Because you aren't guessing anymore.
Yeah. We're going to walk through the exact mechanics of finding these ideas, filtering them, and doing the actual math to ensure they're worth your time.
Because building a business, I mean, it shouldn't be a monologue where you just shout your idea at the world.
Nobody wants to listen to that anyway.
Right. It needs to be a dynamic conversation with the market. It's not about what you want to build. It's about what people are already waving their wallets around, begging to buy.
I love that image, waving their wallets around. So let's start with what we're calling the fatal flaw of the great idea, because it seems like the most common trap people fall into is obsessing over the product before checking if anyone actually cares.
Oh, it's the ultimate trap of the entrepreneur. You sit at home, you brainstorm a clever name.
Oh yeah, the naming phase.
You spend hours on it, you buy the perfect domain name for $20, you spend 3 weeks obsessing over the font on your logo, and you feel this incredible sense of momentum.
Because it feels like work.
It feels exactly like work, but it's an illusion.
Wow.
It is the absolute illusion of progress. Because until someone hands you cold, hard cash, you do not have a business. You have a very expensive, time-consuming hobby.
That is a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people.
It is. Customers do not care about your ideas. They only care about solutions to their specific problems.
I want to look at a massive failure to understand how this happens in the real world. Let's talk about Beat Arcade.
Oh, a classic example.
Because this wasn't, a couple of kids in a dorm room. These were smart people who already had some success, and they still fell into this trap.
Beat Arcade is the perfect encapsulation of the old school approach failing spectacularly. So the founders noticed a macro trend. They saw that fantasy sports were exploding and sports betting was getting huge.
Okay, makes sense.
Right. And they already had an existing Facebook app with a large user base of people who liked sports games. So they made an assumption.
Oh.
Yeah. They thought, this is easy money. We have sports fans. We'll just build a fantasy sports betting site and push our existing users over there.
Which, I mean, on a whiteboard, that sounds completely logical. It sounds like a solid business plan.
On a whiteboard, it's flawless. But look at the resources they poured into that unchecked assumption.
How much are we talking?
They spent 6 months paying programmers to build out the infrastructure for this site. That's about $100,000 in raw development costs.
100 grand. Just on a guess.
Just on an assumption. And they spent another $10,000 on lawyers just to confirm that the online gambling aspects were compliant and legal.
I mean, you have to do the legal stuff, but wow.
Right. They designed it perfectly. They finally launched this absolutely beautiful, highly functional site.
You know what happened? Crickets.
Complete silence. No one came.
Wait, I'm trying to wrap my head around this. If they already had a massive audience of sports fans on their other app, why wouldn't those people click over to a betting site?
Because they built the product in a vacuum based on an assumption of behavior rather than an observation of actual pain. Just because someone likes playing a free sports game on Facebook does not mean they have the desire, the risk tolerance, or, the disposable income to engage in real money sports betting.
That is a huge leap to make.
Exactly. The founders assumed they knew what the customer wanted without ever asking the customer to prove it with a pre-sale or commitment.
Okay, so that's the $110,000 failure.
Right.
Now, let's contrast that with a success story from the exact same era, Gambit.
Yes, Gambit.
This didn't come from a whiteboard session with lawyers and developers, did it?
Not at all. Gambit was born out of pure desperation and intense frustration. So the founders were running successful Facebook games, but they were bleeding money because of their payment provider, this company called OfferPal.
OfferPal was taking a massive cut, right? Like an insane amount.
There's a 50% commission for every single transaction. Half your revenue vanishes the second a user makes a purchase. Imagine building a successful game, doing all the hard work, and poof, gone.
That would drive me crazy.
On top of that, OfferPal was completely ignoring their suggestions for upgrades and feature requests. The founders were furious. They despised this vendor.
I don't blame them.
But in that intense frustration, a critical question emerged. They asked, what is our biggest, most painful problem right now? Do others share it? And is there a solution we are capable of creating quickly?
So they realized they could offer people a much better margin if they just handled the payments themselves.
Exactly.
But here is the critical difference between Gambit and Bait Arcade. They didn't go spend another $100,000 building a payment processor in the dark.
No, they didn't write a single line of code yet. The founder simply picked up the phone.
Just a phone call.
Just a phone call. He called a few friends who also owned and operated Facebook games. He didn't pitch a grand vision. He just asked a very targeted question based on a shared pain point.
What did he ask?
He literally just said, would you switch to a different payment software today if it offered significantly lower commissions?
And because the pain was so acute, the answer was an overwhelming yes.
It was an effortless sell. They were solving an immediate bleeding neck problem for their friends.
Bleeding neck problem. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, it's urgent. So with that validation secured, knowing that people were absolutely ready to switch, they threw together a very rough beta version of the site over a single weekend.
One weekend.
One weekend. Within 2 weeks, Gambit was up and running. They instantly made their friends 20% more money by charging lower commissions, and they actually listened to their feature requests.
And the result of that weekend project, because this is the crazy part.
In their first year, Gambit generated more than $15 million in top-line revenue.
$15 million. Let's just pause on that. A weekend project born out of pure annoyance generates $15 million, while a highly polished 6-month, 6-figure project born out of whiteboard strategy generates $0.
It's the power of the customer-first approach.
But I have to push back here because this sounds a little paradoxical. How do you actually sell something that doesn't physically exist yet?
People get hung up on this all the time.
Right. If I'm calling my friends asking them to switch payment processors and I don't have a payment processor, aren't I just lying to them?
It's not about lying. It's about gauging commitment before allocating resources. Think about it this way.
Sure.
Imagine you want to host a massive, expensive 5-course banquet for your friends.
Sounds delicious.
Right. But the old school way is going to the grocery store, spending $1,000 on prime rib and truffles, cooking for 3 days, setting a beautiful table, and then opening your front door and just hoping people walking by happen to be hungry and willing to pay for prime rib.
That sounds insane when you put it like that. I would never do that.
Because it is insane. But that is exactly what people do when they build apps or write books or open cafes without testing the market.
They just open the door and hope.
Exactly. The new school method, the customer-first approach, is sending out a text message that says, hey, I'm thinking about cooking a massive prime rib dinner this Saturday. It'll be $50 a head. Who's in?
Oh, I see.
If 10 people Venmo you $50, you now have $500 to go buy the ingredients. If no one replies or they say they're vegetarian, you saved yourself $1,000 in 3 days of cooking.
You're selling the invitation, not the meal.
Precisely. You prioritize access to a group of customers, and you focus on an aspect of their life that doesn't work.
That makes so much sense.
Steve Jobs famously articulated this. He said, you have to start with the customer experience and work backwards to the technology. You can't start with the technology and try to figure out where you're going to sell it.
That's fascinating coming from him.
And Jeff Bezos built Amazon entirely on this philosophy. Their very first leadership principle is literally called customer obsession, and it dictates that leaders start with the customer and work backwards.
But wait, didn't Steve Jobs also say that people don't know what they want until you show it to them? People always use that quote to justify building in secret.
Oh, people wildly misinterpret that quote to justify their fear of talking to customers.
Really? How so?
Jobs wasn't saying ignore the customer's problems. He was saying that customers can't always articulate the technological solution.
Oh, like they don't know how to build the thing.
Right. If you asked someone in 2005 what they wanted, they wouldn't say, I want a multi-touch glass slab with a high-speed cellular modem.
No, they'd say they want a slightly better BlackBerry.
Exactly. But if you observed their pain, they hated carrying an iPod, a clunky digital camera, and a terrible Motorola flip phone all in the same pocket. You understand the problem.
It's all about the friction.
Jobs started with the pain of the customer experience and worked backward to the iPhone. He didn't invent the iPhone in a vacuum and then try to convince people they needed it.
Okay, that makes so much sense. It's about observing the friction. But there's a danger here, too. I want to talk about the Disney ghosting.
Oh, this is a painful one.
Because even when you do talk to people, they don't always tell the truth.
The trap of verbal validation. This is a crucial distinction. We are socially conditioned to be polite.
Right.
If you go to your friends or colleagues and say, hey, I have this great idea for a business, what do you think? Almost everyone will say, oh, wow, that sounds amazing. I definitely use that.
Because no one wants to look you in the eye and say, your baby is ugly.
Exactly. And relying on that politeness can be catastrophic. The Disney ghosting is a perfect, terrifying example of this.
Walk us through it.
So the founder had a meeting with executives at Disney regarding an expanded version of their software. The Disney team was enthusiastic. They verbally agreed, saying, of course we'd want something like that. That sounds incredibly useful.
And the founder took that yes to the bank.
He felt entirely validated by that verbal confirmation from a massive corporation. I mean, it's Disney. So he goes back to his team and spends $100,000 building out this massive custom expansion.
Oh no, I know where this is going.
6 months of hard work. He finally finishes it, proudly delivers it to Disney, and they look at it and say, oh, actually, priorities have shifted. We don't really need this right now.
Ouch.
And they completely ghost him.
Devastating. So a verbal yes is completely worthless.
A verbal yes is a polite lie. The only truth in business is a transaction.
Only a transaction.
Until someone puts down a deposit, enters their credit card, or signs a binding letter of intent, you do not have validation. You have a compliment. And compliments do not pay the server costs.
So true. So if we are completely abandoning the idea of brainstorming in a vacuum, and we know we need actual transactional validation from real people, where exactly do we find these eager customers?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right. If you're listening to this right now and you want to start a business, where is your starving crowd?
This is where most novice entrepreneurs take a massive wrong turn. When people decide they want to start a business, they almost instinctively look far beyond their own lives.
What do you mean?
They assume the real action is happening somewhere else. They think they need to invent the next big artificial intelligence paradigm, or they need to fly to Silicon Valley, or they need to target a demographic they know nothing about.
Right, like the guy who works in accounting who suddenly decides he's going to launch a luxury skincare brand for Gen Z influencers.
Exactly. It's an incredibly uphill battle because you have no inherent advantage. You don't know the language of the market, you don't know their secret pains, and most importantly, you don't have any credibility with them.
So what do seasoned entrepreneurs do instead?
Seasoned entrepreneurs do the exact opposite. They mine what we call their zone of influence.
The zone of influence.
Yes, they find opportunities based on who they are, what they actually know, and especially who they know.
I love this. You're saying that instead of trying to reach a million strangers on TikTok, I should be looking at my local 300-person mountain biking WhatsApp group, or my neighborhood HOA Facebook group, or the specific subreddit I check every morning.
Your existing communities are absolute gold mines because trust is already established. You aren't a faceless corporation trying to extract money from them. You are a peer.
That makes it so much warmer.
Let's look at a hyper-local example, Jennifer's Cookies.
This is such a great story because of how ridiculously simple it is.
It is the ultimate low-risk validation. Jennifer didn't rent a commercial kitchen. She didn't take out a $50,000 small business loan. She didn't even build a Shopify website or form an LLC.
No naming thews for her.
Nope. She simply leveraged her immediate zone of influence. She took a nice photo of some homemade M&M oatmeal cookies she had baked, and she posted it on her personal Facebook page with a simple caption.
Just a Facebook post.
Trying something new this week. Who wants to try some homemade M&M oatmeal cookies?
And she just waited to see who raised their hand.
She gauged the demand before scaling the supply. People commented. They sent her direct messages saying they wanted a batch.
The pre-sale.
Yes. She collected the money up front, and then she used that exact money to go to the grocery store, buy the ingredients, and fill the orders. Zero financial risk.
And if no one had commented?
If no one had commented, she would have just eaten the cookies herself and moved on with her life.
It's so elegant, but I have to ask, if it's this easy, why doesn't everyone do it? Why do we default to building anonymous apps instead of just selling cookies to our Facebook friends?
Because of a profound psychological barrier. We are absolutely terrified of the discomfort of asking people we know for money.
Oh, that is so true. It feels deeply vulnerable.
It's the fear of social rejection. Think about the sociology of it. If you spend 6 months building an anonymous app and you launch it into the void of the App Store and strangers don't download it, it hurts, but it's abstract.
Right, you can just blame the market.
Exactly. It's just a metric on a dashboard. You can blame the algorithm. But if you post on your personal Facebook page asking your friends to buy your cookies, and no one buys them,
It feels like a personal indictment.
it feels like your friends don't believe in you.
It's social capital on the line.
Exactly. So what do? We retreat into research as a validation shortcut. We would rather spend 40 hours tweaking the color palette of a website in complete isolation than spend 5 minutes sending a direct message to 5 friends asking for $20.
Wow.
Overcoming this specific fear, the fear of the direct ask within your zone of influence, is the single most powerful step an entrepreneur can take.
Okay, I hear that. And for Jennifer, it worked because she was making cookies, which is a tangible skill.
Right.
But what if you're listening to this and you think, well, I don't know how to bake. I'm a dental assistant. I don't know how to code. I don't have rich tech friends like the Gambit guys did. How does this apply to someone who feels like they don't have a monetizable skill?
That is a brilliant question, and it brings us to one of my favorite case studies, Boris Korsunsky.
Oh, Boris.
Boris's story completely dismantles the idea that you need to be the expert creator of the product.
Yes, because Boris didn't even know how to cook.
Boris was a busy professional. He was working long hours, and he realized he was eating terrible, unhealthy food because he simply didn't have the time or energy to cook a quality meal at the end of the day.
So relatable.
And as you pointed out, he had zero culinary skills, but he recognized a sharp pain point in his own life, and he hypothesized that other people in his zone of influence, other busy professionals, were probably experiencing the exact same friction.
So if he can't cook, what does he do?
He plays the role of the connector. He sent a very simple email to a small group of close friends and colleagues. The subject line was, "Helping you, help me with food."
I love that. Very transparent.
In the email, he explained that he was looking to hire a personal chef to prep healthy meals, and he asked if anyone else wanted in. He said that for $20 a meal, a chef would make the food and it would be conveniently delivered.
But he didn't actually have the chef yet, did he?
He included a PayPal link and said, if you are seriously interested, send $20. He pre-sold a service he didn't even have a vendor for yet.
That is bold.
And brilliant.
And he instantly got 5+ sales from that single email. Boom, an opportunity was born. The demand was validated with actual money.
And he framed it so well. Helping you, help me. Exactly. Once he had the money in his PayPal account, then he went out and found a local chef who was willing to cook the meals in bulk. And Boris kept a margin for organizing the whole thing.
He became the logistics layer between the problem and the solution.
He matched demand with supply. You don't need to be the chef, you just need to be the person who notices that everyone is hungry.
That's a great takeaway.
If you look at your immediate communities, your church, your gym, your coworkers, your family group chats, there are problems everywhere. Anybody who has a network can send an email offering a solution and including a payment link.
Okay, so we know where to look. We are looking in our own backyards, our zone of influence. But what exactly are we looking for? When I scan my WhatsApp groups or just walk through my daily life, how do I spot these golden tickets?
Which brings us to the core shift in the entrepreneurial mindset, the art of becoming a problem seeker.
Problem seeker.
The crucial first step to entrepreneurship is studying your own unhappiness.
Studying your own unhappiness. That sounds intense.
It sounds a bit dramatic, but it's incredibly practical. The best entrepreneurs in the world are often the most dissatisfied people you will ever meet because they are constantly analyzing how things could be better, faster, or smoother.
Constantly looking for the bugs in reality.
Exactly. When you experience frustration or you hear someone else complain, your brain naturally wants to either ignore the friction to get through the day or just join in on the complaining.
Right, venting with friends.
The entrepreneurial mind does something different. It documents that friction. It views frustrations as business opportunities waiting to be monetized.
But wait, let's explore that. Because if you spend your entire day focusing on everything that goes wrong, the traffic is terrible, the coffee is cold, the software keeps crashing, the packaging is impossible to open, doesn't that just make you a chronically negative person?
It sounds like it would.
Doesn't that drain your mental bandwidth?
That's a common fear, but the reality is the exact opposite. When you become a proactive problem seeker, it actually makes you an extreme optimist.
Really? How so?
Because you stop being a victim of circumstance. When something goes wrong for a normal person, they just suffer through it. When something goes wrong for a problem seeker, their eyes light up because they see a puzzle.
Oh, like a challenge to solve.
You start viewing every single annoyance not as a heavy burden, but as a potential cash register. You realize that if this thing is annoying you, it's probably annoying thousands of other people, and those people will gleefully pay whoever fixes it.
That completely flips the script.
Let's look at the story of Shane Heath to see how a tiny personal annoyance turns into an empire.
Shane Heath, the founder of Mud Waciar. I see their ads everywhere now, but the origin story is remarkably small, isn't it?
It started with a very common daily frustration. Shane was a guy who loved the ritual of coffee, but he hated the physical side effects.
The jitters.
He got intense anxiety, the jitters, and a terrible crash in the afternoon. And he noticed that everyone around him was complaining about the exact same thing. People were constantly saying, oh, I need to cut back on coffee. It's making me crazy.
But no one was actually quitting.
No, because the alternatives like plain green tea just didn't hit the same way.
It was a widespread friction point that society had just accepted as normal. You drink coffee, you get anxious. That's just the deal.
But Shane refused to accept the friction. He travels to India and he discovers masala chai. He loves the flavor, he loves the ritual, and he realizes it gives him a very mild, sustained energy lift without making him a vibrating wreck.
So he found a personal solution.
He brings this concept back home and starts experimenting in his kitchen. He mixes chai with cacao, lion's mane mushrooms, and other functional ingredients just to solve his own problem.
He wasn't trying to build a global wellness brand. He was just trying to fix his morning routine.
Exactly. He called his concoction mud. He just started walking around his office and his life with his mug of mud.
And naturally, people asked about it.
People noticed. They asked what he was drinking. He let them try it. They felt the same benefits he did, the energy without the jitters. They started asking him to make batches for them.
The validation.
That tiny, highly personal problem that he solved for himself has evolved into a business generating over $60 million a year in revenue.
$60 million a year because coffee makes people jittery. It's incredible. And the examples in this approach don't have to be massive physical products either. It applies to incredibly mundane, everyday situations.
The Find Me an X concept is a perfect illustration of this.
Break that down.
The author of our source material talks about the agonizing process of trying to buy a specific car. He spent an entire year researching models, negotiating with slimy dealerships, driving across town to look at inventory, and dealing with paperwork.
Buying a car is the worst.
It's terrible. The sheer frustration of that lost time and energy led to a brilliant realization. Time is money for high earners. People would pay handsomely for someone to just listen to their preferences, do all the agonizing legwork, and present them with the top 3 perfect options on a silver platter.
A car concierge. And that Find Me an X framework applies to literally everything in life. Think about the friction of figuring out a quick, healthy breakfast when you're rushing kids to school.
Right.
The anxiety of trying to find a truly reliable, trustworthy house cleaner who won't flake on you. The endless mind-numbing debate of deciding where to go to dinner with your partner on a Friday night.
Or finding a new therapist who takes your specific insurance and actually has availability. Deciding what specific index funds to invest your extra cash in without reading a textbook.
These are all high-friction problems that people encounter every single day.
Every day. If you can become the person who removes that friction, you have a business.
So the immediate action item for you listening to this is to literally keep a notebook or a note on your phone open all the time. When something bothers you, wastes your time, feels overly complicated, or makes you sigh heavily, you write it down. You become an active hunter of friction.
When you intentionally practice this kind of problem spotting, eventually your brain rewires itself. It becomes an automatic background process. It becomes a game.
But let's be real. Sometimes you sit down, you stare at a blank page, and suddenly your life seems perfectly convenient.
Sure, you go blank.
You can't think of a single problem. If you're drawing a blank today, how do we systematize this? If I want to walk away from this deep dive with 10 viable business ideas, what is the process?
This is where we bring in the heavy machinery. The source material provides a rigorous tactical system designed to force ideation. The 4 idea generators.
Okay, let's get into the mechanics.
This is the absolute death of the woo-woo inspiration myth. You do not need to sit on a mountaintop waiting for a vision from the universe, and you certainly don't need to mindlessly scroll TikTok trying to copy what influencers are doing.
I love a good system. Let's break these down.
The core philosophy here is finding the most painful problem you can solve in an area where you have some interest or expertise for the largest possible niche that you already belong to. These 4 generators are the tools to unearth those problems.
Let's start with generator number 1. Solve your own problems. We just touched on this with Shane Heath and the coffee jitters, but how do we actively force this if we aren't naturally noticing things?
You ask yourself 4 highly specific behavioral questions. These aren't abstract, what are your passions questions. They are grounded in your actual daily actions.
Okay, question 1.
Question 1, what irritated me this morning? Walk through your routine, minute by minute. Question 2, what is currently stuck on my to-do list? Question 3, what do I routinely fail to do well? And question 4, what did I recently want to buy but couldn't find?
That to-do list question is fascinating. Let's do a live thought experiment right now. If I look at my personal to-do list, there's a task that has been rolling over for 3 weeks. Organize digital photos.
Oh, that's a good one.
I have thousands of photos across my phone, an old laptop, and the cloud. It's a disaster. I feel guilty about it, but I never do it.
Perfect. Let's analyze why it's stuck on your list. A task stays on a to-do list for one of 3 reasons. It's too hard, it's too boring, or it's too confusing.
It's definitely too boring. Yeah. And overwhelming.
Organizing thousands of photos is tedious and overwhelming. You are experiencing friction. Now, extrapolate that. Do you think you are the only human being on Earth with a messy camera roll?
Not a chance. Everyone I know complains about running out of iCloud storage.
Exactly. So you have just discovered a service business, a digital decluttering service.
Oh, wow.
You charge people a flat fee, they give you access to their messy drives, and you spend a few hours sorting, deleting duplicates, creating chronological folders, and returning a perfectly organized digital archive. You solved your problem, recognized it's a universal problem, and monetize the solution.
I would genuinely pay someone $200 to do that for me right now. Okay, that's generator 1. What if my life is relatively friction-free, or I just want to tap into massive guaranteed demand?
That takes us to generator number 2. Bestsellers are your best friends. The premise here is radically simple. Do not try to reinvent the wheel. Look at what is already selling massive volume. Go look at the Amazon bestseller list. Go look at the top charts on the App Store.
It's like drafting behind an 18-wheeler on the highway.
I love that analogy.
You don't want to be the one pushing all the air out of the way. You let the massive truck do the hard work of breaking the wind resistance, and you just tuck right in behind them and glide in their slipstream.
That is a phenomenal metaphor. You let massive corporations pay the aerodynamic cost of educating the market and building the infrastructure. Let's take the iPhone.
Okay?
Apple spends billions of dollars researching, developing, and marketing the iPhone. They convince 1 billion people to buy one. You do not need to build a better smartphone.
That would be impossible anyway.
Exactly. You just tuck into their slipstream and sell a highly customized $10 protective case. Or you sell a premium glass screen protector. Or you sell a service teaching senior citizens how to use their new iPads to FaceTime their grandkids.
You are accessorizing an existing tidal wave of demand. You don't have to convince anyone they need a phone, they already bought it. You just have to convince them they need your specific case.
It is infinitely easier to sell to a large group of people who have already proven they are eager and willing to spend money in a specific category. Look at video games. If a new Xbox game is breaking sales records, you don't build a competing game. You create a $5 digital guide on how to beat the hardest levels.
Draft behind the truck. Love that. Okay, generator number 3. Where else do people prove they are willing to spend money?
Marketplaces. Go to the digital town squares where people are actively waving their wallets around in the air. Craigslist, Etsy, eBay, Facebook Marketplace, Upwork.
The source material specifically highlights the gig section on Craigslist. I actually looked at this the other day, and it's wild.
Yeah.
It is a direct feed into the weird, hyper-specific pains of your local community.
What kind of things did you see?
I saw a post from someone offering $20 an hour for an assistant babysitter whose only job was to prep snacks and clean up toys while the main babysitter watched the kids. I saw someone offering $9 per load to come pick up their laundry, wash it, and bring it back folded. Someone else was desperately looking for a person to build a custom brick wall in their garden because all the big contractors were booked out for months.
Look at the psychology of what you just described. Those aren't casual thoughts. Those are people who are in such acute pain that they went to a website, created an account, wrote out a description of their problem, and explicitly stated, "I will give you my money if you make this go away."
It's so direct.
One person's pile of dirty laundry is literally another person's reliable cash flow.
You don't have to invent a need. The need is screaming at you.
And you don't even have to do the physical work yourself. If you see a massive demand for custom brick walls on Craigslist, you can start a business connecting people who need walls with independent masons who aren't great at marketing themselves, and you take a referral fee.
Like Boris with the chef.
Exactly. You are playing the role of the reliable connector in a marketplace of chaos.
Which brings us to the final tool, generator number 4, search engine queries.
There are over 8 billion Google searches every single day. Google is essentially a direct, unfiltered wiretap into the collective thoughts, anxieties, and desires of humanity. The strategy here is to use Google's autocomplete function to see what people are desperately trying to learn or solve.
How does that work in practice?
Let's say you are interested in pets. You go to Google and you type in, "How do I train my cat to?" And then you just stop typing.
And see what pops up.
You let Google autocomplete the sentence based on what millions of other people are searching for, and the results might surprise you. Google will populate with things like, use the human toilet, walk on a leash, stop biting the furniture.
Okay, train a cat to use the toilet is hilarious. But if Google is auto-completing it, that means there's massive search volume.
Precisely. If tens of thousands of people are asking a machine how to train their cat to use a toilet, you instantly have a pre-qualified audience. You could write a $10 ebook outlining a step-by-step method. You could invent a specific plastic insert for the toilet seat and manufacture it. You could offer one-on-one virtual consulting via Zoom to help people train their cats. The demand is proven by the search query.
Another great place for this is Reddit. The source material points out a specific community called R Somebody Make This. It is a forum literally dedicated to people actively offering up ideas they wish existed. Somebody make an app that does X. Somebody make a physical tool that solves Y. They're handing you the blueprints.
So the goal for you listening is to use these 4 tools, solving your own friction, drafting behind bestsellers, scanning marketplaces, and analyzing search queries to generate a raw list of at least 10 potential business ideas.
And it's important not to edit yourself during this phase.
Absolutely crucial. Do not self-censor. Let the bad, crazy, and seemingly nonsensical ideas flow onto the paper. Volume is the only goal in the generation phase.
Just get them down.
Once you have your 10 ideas, then you put on your analytical hat. You eliminate the ones that bore you or require a medical degree you don't have. You filter that list down to the top 3 ideas that you believe would be the easiest to implement this weekend and that you would genuinely be thrilled to work on.
Okay, so let's say you've done the homework. You have your list of top 3 ideas, you're feeling enthusiastic. But we've already established that enthusiasm doesn't pay the server costs.
No, it does not.
How do we actually know if one of these 3 ideas is worth dedicating our weekend and potentially our lives to? How do we separate a fun, expensive hobby from a business that has the mathematical capacity to generate real, life-changing wealth?
This is where we transition from art to science. This is where we introduce the most analytical and arguably the most vital part of the entire framework, the 1-minute business model.
The 1-minute business model.
Before you pursue any idea, you must verify it has the geometry of a $1 million opportunity.
And I love that this completely demystifies the financial side of things. People hear business model and they panic. They think they need an MBA or they need to build complex Excel spreadsheets with 10-year cash flow projections.
Those complex spreadsheets are usually just a highly sophisticated form of procrastination. The 1-minute business model requires nothing more than a napkin and a 60-second math formula. But to understand how powerful it is, we have to talk about the sumo jerky story.
Yes. The sumo jerky origin is my favorite part of this entire methodology. It proves that this works from absolute zero. Walk us through how this happened.
So the author was teaching a business class to a group of students who were paralyzed by fear. None of them had ever made their first $1,000 in business. They were coming up with endless excuses.
I can relate to that paralysis.
So to prove a point, he threw down a gauntlet. He told them, I will come up with a brand new business idea today, and I will generate $1,000 in pure profit by the end of this week.
And the students pushed back, right? They said, that's easy for you. You have a massive email list and rich connections.
Exactly. So they established constraints. They said, you can't use your email list. You can't use your personal brand. You have to start from absolute zero, just like us. Oh, and you don't have a week. You have 24 hours.
Talk about pressure.
The constraints are what make the experiment so beautiful. They even forced him to choose between 3 random product ideas they came up with: lemonade, salsa, or beef jerky. He picked beef jerky.
Why jerky? Was he a jerky connoisseur?
He picked it because he intuitively understood the market geometry. He personally loved beef jerky, he was highly health conscious, and he was already spending about $50 a month on premium jerky.
He solved his own problem.
He didn't have to guess if a market existed. He was the market. He figured he had plenty of colleagues and friends in his zone of influence who were also busy, health-conscious professionals who needed high-protein snacks.
So he took that 24-hour challenge, validated the idea by pre-selling it to people in his office building, and eventually turned that weekend bet into a recurring subscription business that he sold for $120,000 just 2 years later.
From absolute zero to a $120,000 exit, all born from a classroom challenge. But the way he mathematically proved it was a viable idea before he started knocking on doors to sell it is what we need to focus on. We need to talk about the formula.
Let's do it. What is the 1-minute business model formula?
It has 2 steps. Step 1, is the Google trend flat or growing? Step 2, estimate your market size and multiply it by the cost of your product. Does that equal total value of at least $1 million?
Let's break that down piece by piece, because this is where the rubber meets the road. Step 1, Google Trends. Why start there?
Because you never want to paddle against the current. You do not want to enter a dying market. If you have an idea for a business selling premium fax machines, Google Trends will show you a line graph plummeting towards zero.
You not sell fax machines.
Right. You want a graph that is flat, indicating stable, evergreen demand, or ideally a graph pointing up and to the right. You want to be surfing what is called a tidal wave market.
Riding existing momentum.
Yes. When successful entrepreneurs launch payment systems for social games or software deals for remote workers or premium digital courses, they are riding massive pre-existing tidal waves of consumer adoption. You don't want to be the person standing in an empty field begging a starving crowd to walk 5 miles to come to your new taco restaurant. You want to find the starving crowd that is already looking for tacos and put your taco stand directly in their path.
Okay, so the trend is growing. Step 2 is the math. Market size multiplied by product price equals total value. Let's do some live math to see how this works. I want to test 3 different ideas. Let's start with an example from the source material. Premium beard oil.
Okay, let's run the model. The problem you've identified is that growing a beard makes your face itchy, and standard lotions don't work. Is it a $1 million idea? Step 1, check Google Trends for beard oil. The graph shows long-term stable interest with a slight upward trajectory. We have a green light.
Step 2. Market size. How many people actually have beards and care about grooming? Let's be conservative and say you are targeting a specific demographic in the U.S., maybe roughly 2.5 million men.
Good. Now, what is the price of your product? You decide to position this as a premium organic product, so it's not cheap. Let's say it's $50 a bottle.
Now we do the math. 2.5 million potential customers multiplied by $50 per unit. That equals a total market value of $125 million.
The math is undeniable. 125 million is vastly larger than 1 million. The geometry works. Is it $1 million idea? Yes. You have a green light to move forward and try to pre-sell it.
Okay, that's a physical product.
Yeah.
Let's try a service business. Let's say I've noticed my friends complaining about their terrible work-from-home setups. Their backs hurt, their webcams are awful. I want to start a home office ergonomic setup service.
Let's run it. Google Trends for home office setup or ergonomics. Massive spike since 2020, still holding strong. Green light, market size. Since it's a physical service where you have to go to their house, your market size is limited to your local geography. Let's say there are 50,000 remote workers in your city and the surrounding suburbs.
So the audience is much smaller than the beard oil.
Yes, but let's look at the price. This isn't a $50 bottle of oil. This is a premium consultation and installation service. You are charging $500 for a comprehensive setup.
Do the math. 50,000 local remote workers multiplied by $500 per service. That equals a total value of $25 million.
Is it $1 million idea? Yes.
Right.
Even with a localized, smaller audience, the high price point creates a massive ceiling. Green light.
Okay, I want to pitch you an idea I just came up with. I love dogs. I want to start a hyper-local mobile dog washing business in my neighborhood. I drive to people's houses and wash their dogs in their driveway.
Let's run the model. Google Trends for mobile dog grooming. Growing steadily. People love convenience. Green light. Market size. You want to stay hyper-local to avoid driving all day. Let's say in your specific zip codes, there are roughly 5,000 dog owners who can afford a premium service.
And I'm going to charge $50 for a wash.
Let's do the math. 5,000 dog owners multiplied by $50. That equals a total value of, well, $250,000.
Oh, wait. That's way below $1 million.
The math doesn't lie. Your absolute market ceiling, if you captured 100% of every dog owner in your area, which is impossible, is only $250,000. It is not $1 million idea.
But wait, I have to push back here. What if I don't care about making $1 million? What if I'm perfectly happy making $70,000 a year to replace my boring corporate job and I just want to hang out with dogs all day? Isn't a $250K ceiling enough for a $70K lifestyle business?
It is a totally valid question, and it's the most common pushback this framework gets. Not everyone wants to be a Silicon Valley mogul. But here is the critical answer. $1 million is not necessarily about your personal bank account. It is a mathematical proxy for viability and ease of growth.
Explain that.
Think about the physics of business. Capturing market share is incredibly difficult. If the absolute maximum ceiling of your entire market is $250,000 and you need to make $70,000 to survive, you need to capture roughly 30% of the entire market.
That sounds hard.
You will be fighting a brutal, exhausting war in the trenches for every single customer. You will exhaust your local market instantly. You will hit a wall and burn out.
Because there's no room for error.
Exactly. But let's look at the home office setup idea. The market ceiling is $25 million. If you want to make your same $70,000 goal, you only need to capture a tiny fraction of a single percent of that market. It is mathematically infinitely easier to succeed and breathe in a massive market than to try and dominate a microscopic one. $1 million ceiling gives you oxygen.
Wow. That completely reframes how I think about niche businesses. You want a big pond, even if you only want a small fish.
Okay.
So my dog washing idea failed the test. Do I just throw it in the trash and move to my next idea?
Not necessarily. If an idea fails the one-minute business model, but you are still deeply passionate about it, you don't have to abandon it. You simply need to use what we call revenue dials to pivot the geometry of the business.
Revenue dials. I like the sound of that. How do I turn the dials on my $250K dog washing business to make it $1 million idea?
There are several primary dials you can twist. Let's look at them. The first dial is frequency. Right now, your math assumes a customer buys a $50 wash once. What if you twist the frequency dial and turn it into a subscription?
Oh, like a recurring service.
You sell a monthly fresh dog club for $40 a month. Now, instead of a $50 lifetime value, one customer is worth $480 a year. Multiply your 5,000 local dog owners by 480, and suddenly your market ceiling is $2.4 million.
Just by changing it from a one-off to a subscription.
Exactly. The math changes everything. Let's look at another dial. Price point and customer type. Maybe $50 is too low. What if you twist the dial and decide you are only going to service luxury, high-maintenance show dogs? You bring a mobile spa van, you use organic oatmeal shampoos, and you charge $200 a groom. 5,000 owners times 200 is a $1 million ceiling.
This is fascinating. What about adding things on?
That's the add-on services dial. You are washing the dog for $50. But what if you offer to trim their nails for an extra $20, clean their teeth for $30, express their glands for $20? Suddenly, your average order value, another dial, jumps from $50 to $120 per visit. You can also twist the product line dial. You are washing dogs, but maybe you formulate your own proprietary dog shampoo and sell bottles to your clients to use between visits.
You are never locked into your first iteration. You can constantly tweak the variables until the math works.
Business is an evolution. The source material highlights an amazing example of this with Sam Parr and his company, The Hustle. Sam started out throwing physical, live events for entrepreneurs, but live events are grueling and hard to scale, so he pivoted. He twisted a dial.
What did it do?
He looked at the daily email newsletter he was writing just to promote the events, and he realized the newsletter was the highly scalable product. He shifted entirely to media. That pivot turned into a media empire that he eventually sold to HubSpot for high 8 figures.
Or look at AppSumo. They started out selling bundled software packages for startups, but they twisted a dial and pivoted to selling individual lifetime software deals for marketing agencies and entrepreneurs, which allowed for massive, sustained growth.
You test, you calculate, and you pivot. So the ultimate action plan for this phase is simple. Take your top idea, check the Google trend, estimate the market size, set your price, calculate the total value.
And if the math shows a green light, meaning the ceiling is over $1 million, you have permission to move forward. If it doesn't, you sit down, you tweak the revenue dials until the math works, or you simply move to the next idea on your list.
It completely removes all the emotional agonizing and the guesswork. You don't have to lie awake at night wondering if your idea is structurally sound. The math tells you objectively if it is capable of supporting your goals. It forces you to be rational about your passions.
This has been an incredibly dense, paradigm-shifting deep dive. We started with the myth of the lonely visionary, and we ended with a literal mathematical formula for success. If we synthesize everything we've unpacked today, from Gamba's weekend hustle to Jennifer's Facebook cookies to the one-minute business model, it all points to one undeniable truth.
What is that truth?
The soul of this entire approach is that successful businesses are not invented in isolation by geniuses staring at whiteboards. They are discovered through an active, observant, and mathematical dialogue with the real world. You spot the friction in your own life, you verify the demand with your zone of influence, you check the math to make sure the ceiling is high enough, and then and only then do you offer the solution. You are solving real problems for real people in real time.
That is the perfect summary. You stop guessing what the market wants, and you start listening to what the market is screaming for.
Before we go, we want to leave you with a final, provocative thought to mull over today as you go about your routine. We want you to literally look at your own credit card statement from the last 30 days, or look at the physical trash in your recycling bin.
Follow the exhaust of your own life.
Exactly. What is something you are already consistently spending your hard-earned money on that secretly frustrates you? Maybe the plastic packaging on your favorite snack is impossible to open. Maybe the customer service for a software you use is agonizingly slow. Maybe the product you buy only solves half of your actual problem, and you have to hack the rest together yourself.
Pay attention to that heavy sigh.
That specific piece of friction, that tiny annoyance that you usually just ignore, that might just be the exact $1 million clue you've been waiting for.
The clues are everywhere, hiding in plain sight once you finally start looking for them.
So now you have the tools to spot the friction, generate the ideas, and use a mathematical formula to prove you have $1 million concept. But having the idea and doing the math is only the prologue. How do you actually get a total stranger to hand you their cash in the next 48 hours without you spending a single dime on a website, a logo, or an LLC? That is the exact secret we will unlock in our next deep dive into the 48-Hour Money Challenge.
What you just listened was the beginning of a full audio, way longer, explaining every single chapter of the book. If you would like to keep listening to the end and access to the full audio, you can access it with the link down below in the description and in the pinned comment.